Good afternoon. I'd like to call this special meeting of the Southampton Town Board to order on this 5th day of December 2017. Please rise and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let's remain standing as we join together in a brief moment of silence. Today I'd like to honor the memory of Christine Epifania. She was the founder of Alternatives Counseling and Drug Treatment Program. She was very active in our community on mental health issues, as well as being a member of our opioid addiction task forces. We send our condolences to her friends and family, and let's also keep in our thoughts and prayers all of the brave men and women of our armed services who defend our freedoms at home and across the world every day. Let's keep them in our thoughts and prayers. Let's join together in silence. Okay, please be seated. Okay, Madam Clerk, would you please read the special meeting notice and follow that with the roll call?
Members of the Town Board, special Town Board meeting, Tuesday, December 5th, 2017, 1 p.m. Please be advised that pursuant to Section 62 of Town Law, a special Town Board meeting will be held in the Town Board Meeting Room, Southampton Town Hall, 116 Hampton Road, Southampton, New York, on Tuesday, December 5th, 2017, at 1 p.m. for the purpose of considering the following: acceptance of finding statements in connection with the zone change application entitled The Hills at Southampton Mixed Use Plan Development District, East Quogue. Resolution number 2017-906, tabled from November 13, 2017, special Town Board meeting. Notice of adoption of a local law to change the zoning district of certain parcels from CR 200 to the Hills at Southampton Mixed Use Plan Development District, HSMUPDD, for a residential golf development course development, East Quogue. J. Schneiderman, Supervisor, Town of Southampton, dated November 27, 2017. Supervisor Schneiderman.
Present.
Councilwoman Lofstad.
Here.
Councilwoman Scalera.
Here.
Councilman Bouvier.
Here.
Councilman Glinka.
Here.
Okay, so we're going to go right to public portion today. I ask that each speaker stick to the 3 minutes allotted so that we can get through the 17 cards. Let's see, 3 minutes each. That's about 51 minutes. So hopefully in an hour we can get through the public portion. I ask you respect everybody's opinion. It may not be the same as your own, but please allow the speaker to finish their time without interruption. And so I would ask that they give the same respect to you when you are speaking. If you haven't filled out a blue card, you need to do so if you want to be heard today. They are available at that front table when you first came in. The clerk will let you know when your time is reaching an end, when there's 30 seconds left. You'll be notified so that you can wrap up. And again, please do not exceed the 3-minute time limit. People have come, I know, from far distances. Many of you come from the East Quogue community. A lot of these public hearings we have held in the East Quogue community at night to make it as easy as possible for people to attend. This is not a public hearing. This is public portion. The hearing has already closed. We do have, obviously, this meeting to determine, to vote on the finding statement, which is the end of the secret process, and the board's conclusion based on that document, as well as the PDD law. So those two decisions are before us today, and yes, you can comment to the board prior to the vote on those two decisions. So we'll go right to the cards. I'm going to start. These are going to be in the order that they were received. The first is Jessica Insalaco, and she will be followed by David Seeley.
Good afternoon. Jessica Insalaco, East Quogue. I did want to let you know that I've heard from a lot of people in East Quogue who couldn't come today because of the hour. They're working, teachers, etc. So I hope I'll carry their thoughts and support here today. I'm really excited to be here today. We get to be part of the history of Southampton Town. It's a history rich in agriculture, fishing and clamming, tourism, nature, and recreation. Today you can build on that rich history in supporting the Hills Resort, which supports sustainable farming in East Quogue, water quality improvements to clean up our bays, shellfish restocking to increase our aquatic life, seasonal tourism, massive preservation, and recreation. How wonderful. Your predecessors will also be excited as they've long envisioned a resort and golf course for this property. They'll also be thrilled that their prescience has been improved upon by the fantastic work of the Hills Science Team and that of independent scientists and environmentalists like Kevin McAllister, Chris Gobler, Jock Comer, all of whom have said that the Hills is the lowest impact development alternative, which agrees with your own finding statement. I read an article yesterday from researchers at UC Davis who've been testing pump and fertilize for several years now to show that the Hills fertigation phytoremediation plan works. We can clean up our aquifer and use the nitrogen that's already in the water to fertilize the Hills property. I know also that modern sewage treatment plants like the one at Riverhead can treat effluent to drinking water quality, so I know the Hills can do the same thing and maintain a world-class facility to protect water quality. I know the Sabonic has been able to maintain excellent water quality for years based on regular testing, so I know the Hills can do the same thing with its golf course. So the technology's there, the research is there, the proof is there. So it's an exciting day, and I hope you will all choose the lowest impact alternative from the extensive research that's been completed in your FEIS and your finding statement. This is not about emotion or politics. This decision really should be about the scientific review of all the alternatives. So, you guys get to choose the alternative that actually starts improving area water quality. You get to choose the alternative that invests significantly in our community. You can choose the alternative that protects the local school and the local taxpayers. You can choose the alternative that provides significant public access. You can choose the alternative that reduces the burden on our volunteers, first responders. And you can choose the alternative that preserves about 500 acres in East Quogue. You can choose the alternative that's recommended in our comprehensive plan. So, you can choose the Hills Resort Plan. It's easy. Science supports it, history supports it, professional planners support it, and your own findings support it. So, I hope you'll join me in supporting the Hills. Thank you.
Okay, next up, David Seeley, followed by Nancy Kane.
Good afternoon, Board. I'm here to support the Hills for the last time. I hope this is the last of these hearings, hoping that this is done today. Because it's dividing our neighborhood, basically. And it's not a 50-50 divide. There's people here because they're taking care of our children, taking care of the school, donating their time elsewhere, fire departments or whatever. They can't be here, so I'm here in support of those people as well. My wife, my brother, my father, all the people that have to work today and can't be here. If there were a no vote today, it would go against the whole finding statement. The finding statement to me is a very positive statement and provides the framework for what is going to go forward. And it's a goalpost. It's the goalpost that was set forward by the PDD, the original PDD, and the PDD law that, that the Hills is under at this point. If you say no today, you've moved that goalpost. And in my opinion, that puts us into arbitrary and capricious. And I'm hoping that that doesn't happen because that means there's going to be a lawsuit. And that's going to cost East Quogue and the Southampton town more money, more time, and more aggravation, and more divide. So please, don't make this happen. I would love to see a gorgeous, beautiful development instead of 170 homes or something to that effect. So I'd just like to voice my final approval for this particular project. Thank you.
Good
Okay,
afternoon.
Sorry, 1 second. Nancy, you will be followed by Heather Girgenti.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm here today to read two letters from two residents who couldn't be here because they're working. As a local taxpayer and someone who was born and raised in Southampton, I would like my voice to be heard. I feel it is an outrage that a development has come into our area with the clear intention of improving the East End of Long Island, and its efforts are falling on deaf ears. Our area has problems, and I see the Hills as an organization working diligently towards solving these issues. I've witnessed change over the decades and appreciate careful planning. I have seen developments and golf courses built which have added to the beauty of our area. One could say this is change, yet I have seen it for the better. The Hills have been working with the needs of our local community in funding programs and addressing the challenges in our waterways. These changes are ways to improve our area and add value. Yet you as voters are standing in the way of progress. Your job is to represent the local people of this community, and I feel you have a responsibility to vote yes to the Hills project. Thank you, Colleen Higgins, West Hampton. And then this letter is to affirm my broad and total support for the PDD known as the Hills, currently awaiting final approval by the town board. My support involves a clear understanding of this project after much research and discussion. As a 25-year-plus year-round resident of our beautiful East Quogue, this project will enhance and add to the charm and small-town vibe of East Quogue. My concerns include the ability to provide community services with the alternative plan. My husband, Mark, is a 35-year member of the East Quogue Fire Department. The men and women do an amazing job, but adding 100-plus year-round residences will overwhelm our small department. As a member of the Ladies Auxiliary of the East Quogue Fire Department, I'm deeply concerned for the impact the alternative project will have on our small but well-trained and dedicated fire department. In addition, our school will be negatively affected to the point of being unable to continue to provide the quality child-centered education that defines the East Quogue Elementary School. The Hills project must be approved. Darren Cedar, East Quogue. Thank you.
Can everybody hear okay? Yes? It's a little bouncy, but you can hear it? Okay. So, is too much of an echo to understand what's being said? It's okay? Charlie, is there, I don't know if a way to make it any louder without making the echo worse? All right, so just maybe, Charlie, if you get a chance, or Sage, if you can kind of just go to the back at some point during one of the speakers speaking to make sure it is audible in the back. All right, so Heather, you're next, followed by Al Algieri.
I'll try to speak clearly, if that helps. Hi, Heather Girgenti, East Quogue, here in support of the Hills. So I've spoken to a ton of people about this project over the course of the last year or so, both in support and against. I've had really interesting conversations on both sides. One thing that has remained very clear to me is that the vast majority of the people who watched me grow up, who've helped my parents raise myself and my brother, who, taught me in school, who came to my dance recitals and cheered on my brother at his lacrosse games, who led by example and kept my best interest at heart, they were all for the Hills. So it was reassuring to know, even though I'm an adult and I'm capable of making my own decisions, that all of those who I've always respected and admired and trusted all of my life were in support of this proposal. It's overwhelming for a lot of us, especially me, to read through all the science, but I trust them, so I continued to educate myself. But over the past few weeks, I've heard this narrative that East Quogue and the surrounding communities are divided 50-50. So I decided to conduct a little experiment, and on Friday afternoon, this past Friday, I kind of created and distributed my own little 2-question survey, just kind of for myself, asking a simple question: do you want the Southampton Town Board to approve the Hills over the as-of-right subdivision? Yes or no? I sent this survey to everyone I know from the area. I asked them to circulate it to their networks via email and text. I posted it on social media, and asked others to do the same, got a ton of shares. It posted in a bunch of East Quogue groups. And in just 3 days, I got 192 respondents. So I can only imagine how many people I would have gotten had I circulated this a month ago or even longer. And I did require people to fill out their names, so there were no duplicate votes or any of that. And the results showed that more than 86% of those who were surveyed said yes. So that's out of 192 people, 166 to 26. 59% of those respondents were from East Quogue, and another 35% were from either Westhampton, Westhampton Beach, or Quogue. So I also noticed from the names, I required everyone to fill out their name, that many of the vocal members of the opposition took the survey. So again, I can only assume that they also passed it around to their networks the same way that I did. And many of the people who took the survey, I recognize their names. I see them every day in town, and they aren't able to make it here because of work or kids or school or whatever it may
30
be.
seconds.
So this is just a small chance for them to be represented as well, and I think it's something to keep in mind as you vote today. I can submit this if...
Thank you. Okay, next up is Al Algieri, followed by P.J. Mitchell.
Al Algieri speaking for the East Quogue Civic Association. Supervisor Schneiderman, town board members, you're here today to make a decision. The town board makes this decision. You've had 4 years to hear everyone speak, and the only thing I'm going to add to that is that you will make the decision, and I can go back to doing what the Civic does best, like the lighting ceremony we had in the East Quogue Park. That's what we've done prior to the Hills. My name is Al Algieri, A-L-G-I-E-R-I, and I am the deliverer of the message. Algieri is not the message. If you listen to the last town board, Algieri was the message. It isn't. Have a good day. I respectfully will listen to your result today, and I will be very happy either way and respect it. Thank you.
Okay, P.J. Mitchell, followed by Philip Grossman.
Good afternoon. P.J. Mitchell, speaking on behalf of myself and hopefully some citizens of East Quogue. I'm here basically to just make sure that there's a voice for people in East Quogue. Let's be clear about something. Discovery Land did not come all the way from Arizona to uplift the citizens of East Quogue and make our lives better. They came because they wanted to develop a multi-million-dollar project. They wanted to make money for themselves. Let's get the facts straight. They're not here because of some altruistic idea that East Quogue needs to be made better. And I suspect that most of the people on this room have a dog in this fight, and it's a financial dog, whether it's jobs or construction, or I don't know what it is, but I also suspect that most of the people on that side of the room maybe care a little bit about the environment and care a little bit about East Quogue, and basically it's time to send Discovery Land back to Arizona. Thank you.
Philip Grossman, followed by Teresa Winter.
Great, thank you, Jay, full board. You know, my name is Phil Grossman. I'm a full-time resident of Westhampton Beach. I've been involved in community-based real estate development for over 35 years throughout the country. Now is a time for you to do the right thing. Follow what your consultants have said. Start a change. Start a positive change. Help East Quogue. Help the residents of East Quogue and the surrounding communities of Quogue and Westhampton, Westhampton Beach, Remsenburg, but overall for the entire town. I just want to urge you again, I am of course for the Hills. Do something positive. Help our waterways, help the clams, help the mussels, and help our people. Thank you.
Teresa Winter will be followed by Chick Voorhees.
Hi, I'm Teresa Winter, and I'm from Quogue. I want to thank you again for the opportunity to speak today as a member of the community. I have attended most of the meetings and have heard the voices from both sides of the aisle, and what I've come to realize now is that we are close to the conclusion of your final vote, that what has been a concern from the residents who oppose the Hills is that they are fearful that if the proposal is passed, that all the promises and guidelines that Discovery would have to follow might not be adhered to and followed in order to preserve our area. This concept has confused me, since from the beginning of this process, we have seen Discovery Land not only follow the board's directions flawlessly, but they have gone above and beyond to make these assurances. And we have all heard about corporations that come into small towns and promise the world to the community, and then they do not follow through with the standards put in place by the board. And if you review Discovery Land's other properties, they have consistently enhanced the communities that they have been affiliated with. More importantly, I do not believe that this board here today would jeopardize its community in that way, and I have faith in you as our elected officials to hold them accountable. I'm asking you, the board today, to have faith in Discovery to do what they have stated they will do to enhance our community, just as we have put faith in you to do what is best for our community, and allowing them to do so. So please vote yes to the Hills today.
Okay, Chick Voorhees is up next, followed by Antonio Butera.
Good afternoon, Supervisor, members of the board. My name is Chick Voorhees, and I'm an environmental planning consultant for the applicant. This is a unique project in many ways. I rarely see a project with such overwhelming support. The supporters are intelligent and well-informed, and they represent the local population. The project is unique because it improves water quality. This is demonstrated fact. There have been so many professionals involved with this, from the team that the applicant put together, my colleagues that have worked on this, as well as the staff of the planning department, AKRF, Dr. Marty Petrovic, and Dr. Christopher Gobler. The project is also unique because it provides true public benefits. $1 million for sanitary upgrades, bay restoration, hundreds of thousands of dollars, school district support, fire district support, downtown parking and beautification, and many more. It's also unique because it increases the tax base substantially, and this is based on verified data. Our office prepared the initial analysis, but it was with the help of the town assessor and town tax receiver, and it will actually reduce taxes. The project is unique because it conforms with all applicable regulations. There's massive preservation. There is limitations on fertilizer-dependent vegetation through the Pine Barrens Act, and the Aquifer Protection Overlay District of the town. All of these regulations are conformed with by the project. It also conforms with the land use recommendations of the East Quogue Land Use Plan, and this plan came directly from the community. I know that not everyone supports the project, but I have not heard any credible or convincing reasons for this project to not be approved, especially when you consider all the positives this brings locally and regionally. Perhaps the most important factor to me, having participated in the seeker process on many projects in Southampton, is the record that has been created. The professional planning and environmental consensus is that the project represents good planning and is best for the environment. The draft EIS, final EIS, and the finding statements all support this conclusion. Based on this strong record, anything other than approval would appear to me to be arbitrary.
30 seconds.
Finally, Discovery is a reputable company. Their approach to development puts the environment first, and they came to this project because they build exactly what was envisioned for this site in the East Quogue Land Use Plan. Even since the EIS was completed, we have been challenged to come up with additional voluntary benefits to help water quality. All that is needed is a yes vote, and we can start to improve the water quality of Shinnecock Bay. I hope you agree, and I hope you will vote yes.
Okay, Antonio Butero, followed by Richard Amper.
Hi, I'm Antonio Botero. I've been living in West Hampton Beach for over a decade now. I've been working and living out here in that time. I think I've ever seen a project that's so forward-thinking, and I believe that the Hills is a project that this community needs. This type of forward thinking will not just help the community at large presently, but for our children, children's children going forward. Thank you.
Richard Amper, followed by Dan Farrell.
My name is Richard Amper. I'm with the Long Island Pine Barren Society. I assume that you know what you're doing at this point, and so I've come here to say thank you. I want to thank the people who are responsible for this enormous process. It's been arduous on everyone. I know there were a lot of well-intentioned people on both sides, but the fact of the matter is I think we need to say thank you to people who really, really made a difference in a very, very long struggle. I want to thank the Long Island environmental and civic community for all of the efforts. I've never seen anything like it in 25 years, standing up for the community and doing what they thought was right. The Southampton Water Protection Alliance, meeting every single week, year after year, saying that water comes first. I want to thank them for that. That's a wonderful civic activity. These people are not making money. They don't stand to make a profit. They're just looking out for their community. I want to thank my Pine Barren Society staff. They have worked just tirelessly on this. This has been the most difficult challenge than Hampton Hills, which occurred before the Pine Barrens Act was passed. I want to thank Fred Thiel, one a really, truly honorable public servant that everybody respects because he stands up for what's right, and Bridget Fleming, who seemed to understand this before a whole bunch of the rest of us. I think she did a wonderful service to this board and to the community. To Fred Havemeyer, who put his name and reputation on the line. It was a good reputation and a great name and great public service. I want to thank you very much, Fred. Thank you very much. I want to thank Alec Baldwin, who went out of his way, took time from a very, very busy schedule, cares about the East End, and wants to do the right thing. I want to thank Lisa LaCorey, the planning person who I have most respect for. This reduced impact alternative is going to come in front of you in the future, and I think it's the solution to the town's problem. To Jeff Bragman, who helped us legally and explained how the State Environmental Quality Review Act works and how you can use that to do what's right for the community and not just support a well-financed project. To David Reesfield from the Long Island Environmental Voters Forum. That organization was created to help make decisions between the people who are doing the right thing and people who are doing the wrong thing, and there's a little bit of both. Marietta Seaman, just a retired person who had excellent service, and then when she became a citizen, came out and stood up for the community. Cindy Schermeyer, I want to actually compliment her, took no position on this issue at all, but week after week, month after month, till 11 and 12 o'clock at night, her job was to say 30 seconds. So thank you very much for
30 seconds.
And by the way, when I'm speaking, somebody should be saying 30 seconds at the right time. I do understand that. In the spirit of the day, I won't say anything about Mark Hissey, Wayne Brune, Jay Schneiderman, or even Councilwoman Scalera and Councilman Glinka. I want to say the most important thing of all. I want to speak to the people of this town. I've worked in this town for 30 years, and I've never seen people more committed to their community and especially to the environment. I think that they do a fabulous job. And
3
they have
minutes.
two great representatives. They've got John Bouvier, who has given this more thought and more research and more objective analysis than anybody going. Thank you, John. You represented this community. And Julie, you are not a politician. I'm afraid to say you're just a good citizen who thinks that you get up in the morning trying to do what's right for the community. To the people of Southampton, thank you and God bless you. Good luck and congratulations. I think you beat the bad guys.
All right, Dan Farrell, you're up next, followed by Brian Tiemann.
I'm Dan Farrell, I'm an East Quogue resident, and I am for the Hills. I'm here today to ask you to vote for the Hills. In fact, I'm actually here, I wasn't going to speak today, but we've been labeled special interests, and I haven't been especially interested in town politics ever until this Hills project came up. And the fact that two of the board members said that they would vote against the findings, which doesn't make sense. So this latest findings was November 27th. We had the board meeting last week, the 28th, and Mr. Bouvier, you said you never read the findings, but they came out. And Mr. Blinka had a copy in his hand next to him. So obviously, I don't know if you're taking this seriously, but essentially it said this was the best environmental, social, and economic plan. Okay? You have the school board against it, you have the fire department against it, you have the police department against it. It's the whole infrastructure of East Quogue. It's literally the people that run East Quogue.
I'm sorry,
And if you,
you said the fire department, the school,
and the police department.
are against the project?
No, against, I'm sorry, for the hills. Let me clarify. For the hills, against the 2 subdivisions, because it's going to be a huge burden on them, right? Everybody's following? Okay. And then, so then we look at Al Algeri's East Quogue Civic Association, who's reported on constantly by 27 East, whereas we're misrepresented as special interests. And then after the finding statement, the next article that came out was Southampton Conservation Board feels that it's going to be bad for the environment. That was the next article that came out in 27 East. So we've been completely railroaded as a community. And if you look out, we're again relatively young, 30s, 40s, right? Our generation is the most environmentally conscious. Going forward, that's what we're going to do. This is the best plan, by far. That's all I have to say.
All right, Brian, you're Brian Tiemann, followed by Camden Ackerman.
Hey, members of the board, Brian Tiemann, West Hampton Beach. I wasn't going to speak because I didn't really think there's much more I could say. You all know my position on this project, and I would like to think that you respect that position. I've made it clear. I'm not going to repeat all the details of the project. You know it. So I was searching for something meaningful to say, and I think the most appropriate thing to say, in all sincerity, is thank you. We'll see what happens in a little while, but thank you for your public service. I've dedicated a lot of my life to public service already, and it's no picnic a lot of times, as you can see by what you guys have gone through. And I served on the Town Conservation Board for 5 years, loved that job, had a great time, think I did really good work there. Was a town trustee for a couple of years. That wasn't as much fun. Got a little political, and political is not my thing. Now I'm a West Hampton Beach Village trustee, which I enjoy very much. I've had the pleasure of working with some of you on some initiatives. John, looking forward to continued support with the sewer district that we're implementing there. We remain very committed to that and think it's the right thing to do there. And to sum up, the public service, again, is really difficult at times, and I understand that, and I know that, and I respect all of you for doing this. I think if you run a calculation on your hours spent, you probably make about $1 an hour, as do I as a village trustee, so that's obviously not why you're doing it. And I just want to thank you for it and look forward to the future together as a community. Thanks. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Cameron Ackerman. I live in West Hampton Beach. Forgive me if I'm a little flustered what I had to say. I kind of had to change.
It wasn't something you said. Charlie, you got that? Sage? Hold on 1 second. Stop the clock for a second. You want to check the mic, Camden? Just say test.
Test.
All right. All right. Go. Can we reset?
We're going to start over.
Start off.
So I was a little troubled a couple minutes ago when I listened to Mr. Amper's giant pat on the back to everybody. I've attended all of these hearings, and I've been very active in this process because I feel strongly that this is an incredible opportunity for my community, for the community that I'm going to be living in 20 years from now, that will me and my family will see the repercussions for making a poor vote on this. It's troubling to me that I'm sitting here and it feels like, you know, it's a done deal, and the opposition, who has spent 2 years spreading misinformation all over the place, is now applauding themselves before the votes even happened. I do want to take 1 minute and talk about a different golf course, and something that happened in this town over a decade ago. Golf at the Bridge, when it was originally proposed, you saw the same three-ring circus come to town, giving the same misinformation, fighting it at every corner, saying you can't build a golf course on the sole source aquifer. You can't build a golf course, to the point where they riled residents so much that they were trying to preserve a racetrack that for years people wanted to be rid of. I find it troubling. In my mailbox this last summer that I received an invite from the group for the East End, who at the time was the group for the South Fork, that they were one of the ones out there sharing this misinformation that golf over the aquifer, which the aquifer is all of Long Island, it's every inch of Long Island, it's every single place that we're at. They were out there pushing against this for years, filing lawsuit after lawsuit. Where is their yearly fundraiser held now? Golf at the Bridge. And if you look at your own science that studies the bridge's nitrogen levels every year, it's an incredible success. And I just pray that the misinformation that we've all been receiving for 2 years doesn't impact what could be a fantastic project for all of us and my community. Thank you.
It's like a wedding, like the bride's family and the groom's family. It seems like the audience seems to be divided here. Pro-Hills sit over here and opposition over here. All right, Camden is followed by Bob Amato. Bob was followed by Yasmin Labardi.
Mr. Supervisor, town board members. My name is Bob Amato. I am an East Quogue resident. I'm also the president of the Shinnecock Shores Homeowners Association, which is the largest homeowners association in the town of Southampton. I have done my own unofficial survey, and of the people in my community, the people, friends that I have that are members of other boards in Hampton Bays, friends I have in West Hampton, and the vast and overwhelming majority of people that I speak to are for the Hills project. I am now a member of the East Quogue Concerned Citizens Association because we feel that we need a voice other than the East Quogue Civic Association, which is purely an extension of the Democratic Party. So if we look at the facts, and I know you all have, and I understand that some people have, for whatever reasons, have made decisions, may they be political or whatever, not to support this. But here it is in a nutshell. So we've got, in my opinion, the vast majority of people in East Quogue and in the towns west of the canal for this project. It is, as far as water quality, the study that you guys funded with our tax money came back and said this is the best solution for water quality. Schools. This is going to help our schools tremendously. It's going to keep our taxes down. Yes, we have, in my association alone, we have many new families with young children. And I always hear the rhetoric about what are we going to do about young families leaving the East End? Then why would you raise their taxes and make their schools more difficult for them to have their children in? So If you support keeping young families on the East End, you must support this project. Local economy. So we hear that rhetoric all the time. Small business. We need to support small business. Local economy. Why local? Well, what better than to have a resort community? That's where these guys make most of their money. Spending money, people coming there, spending money, and keeping these people. By the way, most of the people who own these businesses are residents. and
30
voters
seconds.
And your constituents. My only conclusion here is, and I'm sure most of you here, cannot understand why anybody would turn this opportunity down for all of your constituents. And one quick word, Mr. Amper, what community are you talking about? It's not mine. And I'm so glad, I'm so happy that Alec Baldwin is against the Hills Project. Gee, that really makes a big difference for me.
Okay, Yasmin Labarty. Yasmin will be followed by Richard Blows.
Hi, I grew up in Quogue, and now I'm a resident of East Quogue, and I'm just here, yeah. So, when will everyone realize that we are an island? We have a limited amount of land. I want you to look into eminent domain in order to preserve these 600 acres of beautiful pine barrens. Make it public land so that the people of East Quogue and Long Island can experience and enjoy this rare environment. It makes absolutely no sense to say that the project The Hills is good for the environment. It's not possible. Vote no for The Hills and vote no for development and pollution. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Richard Blows, followed by Larry Oxman.
Good afternoon. My name is Richard Blows. I live in East Quogue. I've been there for about 40 years. Hampton Bays for another 20. So I consider myself a native. Julie, I know you've made that comment. And I know when our families came out here, it was a struggle. And it was a struggle during the summers, even though we had tourism, because it was such a short period. We cannot afford to have tunnel vision. Right now, over a third, if not closer to 50% of the land in Southampton town is preserved. Now that's not to say that that's bad, but you can't just rely on that. We have to rely on the other things that are just as important. And that one thing is our economy. And our economy is based on second and third home ownership. That's why our season has grown from 2 short months to several months long, and even winter months where we can now survive. East Quogue currently has, and correct me if I'm wrong, has more land preserved than any other hamlet in the town. And yet we feel it's not enough. Am I wrong?
I think Flanders probably is about 80% off the tax rolls, 80% preserved in the Flanders area.
Well, and then I'll have to get in touch with the newspaper. But anyway, East Quogue has a great amount of land preserved. And you can vote yes for this if you want. You voted for things before that didn't quite go along with what people thought in the beginning were the right things, but in the end proved to be the right things. You've used CPF money to buy a golf course yourself. Sagaponic. You use CPF funds. And yet here we have an opportunity that you don't even have to use CPF funds. And in fact, that area can generate well over $10 million more of CPF funds. You don't put any restrictions on existing golf courses, yet you have an opportunity for a golf course to come in and set an example. We use our money, and a lot of it, to preserve farmland. It's a very important industry to us. But yet, let's not be naive. Farmland generates nitrogen.
30
So,
seconds.
but yet we buy these farms and we don't covenant them. We don't say you can't use anything other than organic. So please, give East Quogue a chance to grow. I moved there, we need this. And this is something that if you work with them and show us that we have a government that will fulfill the commitment to make sure that what they agree to, they adhere to. That's the important thing. And if you can do that, you can vote yes for this and make us all better off. Thank you.
All right, next up is Larry Oxman, followed by Dan Manning.
Good afternoon, Larry Oxman. I just wanted to follow up a couple of things. I had brought up to your attention about the East Quogue Civic Association. Going on public records, I'm trying to look up, all nonprofits have to file what's called a 990. It's their tax returns. I can't find any record of this. I guess I'll have to petition the Attorney General. But I'm confused because of the two different organizations, the one that was formed in 1960 and the one that was formed by Mr. Algieri in 2002. He talks about his membership. I just don't know where that money is going. If he says he has 400 members at $15, that's $6,000. You know, I don't know. Anyhow, so another observation. Over the course of the several years that this project has been before the town, originally at the public hearings, I would say that most people were speaking out against it. But as this process has gone on, what I've really seen is a real tipping of the scales. People are coming out that, you know, house people that have a home, children, can't necessarily come here. They're coming out and speaking in favor. And I would say that it's, in my opinion, it's really turned around significantly. We heard from a school board talk about this project. That's really unusual. So talking about the benefits that it would have to their community. We also heard from West Hampton Beach, from the village of West Hampton Beach. We heard from the mayor, some of their trustees. They have firsthand experience dealing with this company, and they said very positive things. So it's no longer hypothetical, it's not theoretical, it's from actual experience of working with this company, and what they said was very positive. Last, the whole idea of having a stake in the game. You know, the fact that somehow I'm being influenced by this company for monetary reasons. I take real insult to that. I have a stake in the game whether the car dealership down the street sells a car. I have a stake in the game if someone buys a sandwich from a deli. I have a stake in all of the economics out here in my town. So I just, it's all connected. So thank you very much.
So I'm down to the last three cards. I want to remind anyone who has not spoken or filled out a card, if you want to be heard, fill out a card. They're available in the hall. Once I get to the last speaker, we're going to go right then to the agenda. So if you plan on speaking and haven't filled out a card, now is your opportunity. All right, Dan Manning?
Dan Manning, East Quogue, longtime resident, over 30 years. I've spoken before, and my position is obviously for the Hills, as many, many people in this room obviously are as well. This week I sent a picture to the whole board. It was a picture of billboards on the property at Pauletto, advertising the subdivision. Did anybody on the board not receive that and view it?
I've seen it.
Everybody has. Terrific. Okay. Because that's one of the consequences of a no vote here tonight. Not only will you have that subdivision, which is already before the planning board, and you will have the subdivision in the Hills. This community cannot afford those subdivisions. A Hills vote saying no to the Hills will be the consequences that this community cannot afford. The young people of this community deserve better. They need a future of this community, and that was something that I brought up at another meeting how you're really looking at the future of the young community here with the Hills. The science, I'm not going to speak to it. All of you have done your research on it. It's hard to dispute what I'm reading and hearing about the science. I don't know how anybody can, and I did a little research on the board. I don't believe there's anybody on the board with your education and background that can dispute the science of qualified experts in their fields and groups and agencies who have come together with their findings. It just baffles me. If I was doing work in my home and I needed a plumbing job, I wouldn't go bring an electrician to get his analysis on it. So I think you have to take seriously the consideration of all the special scientists who have weighed in on this, and I'm sure you have, hopefully. I said at the last meeting, if a no vote goes before this, who is going to be held accountable here? The community of East Quogue needs this, and we cannot afford anybody saying no to this. But if somebody does say no and this thing falls, somebody has to be held accountable. I don't know who it's going to be. Like I said, the special interest groups, I want to thank them for their concern over this process, but they are the real outsiders here. They are the groups that are coming in here and trying to influence our community, and by influence elections and influence all the agenda going on in this process of the Hills. So these special interest groups, I
30
thank you for your
seconds.
concern, but now it's a Hills project involving East Quogue and East Quogue only. East Quogue has obviously shown the support. The agencies, the people, the young people of the community, we need this project. Please say yes to the Hills and oversee all the outside noise going on about this. It's really about the future of our young people. Thank you.
All right, the next speaker is going to be Michael Marino, and then Michael will be followed by Ron Campsey. And if there are more cards coming in, I need to get them.
Good afternoon, Board.
Good afternoon, Mike.
Nice to see you once again. In today's agenda, the fourth paragraph, Resolution 2017-1123. This is a quote. Whereas the proposed action is to develop 165.53 acre property with 118 residential units, an 18-hole golf course, a clubhouse, a pond house, a maintenance area, and all associated roads and driveways, and having 424.4 acres undisturbed. Can we really fit all of that? According to Golf Week magazine, in a report from the Golf Course Superintendents Association of America, an 18-hole golf course averages 150 to 200 acres. Another source, William Amick of the American Society of Golf Course Architects, says 140 to 180 acres are required for a golf course. Let's use a low number, 150 acres. This leaves 15 acres for discovery land to fit 118 residential units, a clubhouse, a pond house, maintenance area, all driveways and parking, and roads. Are these 15 acres magic acres? Did they buy them from Parlato? Or did they buy them from the guy who sold Jack the Beanstalk beans? This level of land disturbance is grossly understated. If the project's approved, in order for the 20% of tee times to be a meaningful public benefit, it should be one of every 5, each day the course operates. If approved as a seasonal resort, the building should be required to be designed without heating systems. Thank you.
All right, do we have more cards? Here they come. All right, so Ron Campsey, you're next. George K. is on deck. Good afternoon, Ron.
Good afternoon. I don't have my hearing aids with me, and I didn't bring my glasses, so I'm going to just be off. I'm going to be speaking.
Without the glasses.
I'm going to be speaking to you off the cuff. Now, this is probably one of the biggest decisions the town board will make for the village of East Quogue. I've lived here 40 years. I don't believe that we probably received the best of the town had to give to us, because we always seemed like the godchild that was on the west side, and we never got the fruits. But the people of East Quogue are a fine working group of people, and they're asking this town board to come forward and do what's right for our community. It's not for Bridgehampton, it's not for West Hampton, it's for East Quogue. And for you to sit up there and think about your vote today, I want you to think about the people who get up and work every day just to live, because we're a working community. And this would help our community with the schools, our town. I don't think it'll do anything for Main Street, because our Main Street can't grow that much. But it can help the people be able to live in their communities. So the last time I spoke about moral responsibility. Sitting on the board is a moral obligation that you made when you took the oath to serve the people of the town, the whole town. But you also remember the hamlets that you do serve are individuals, and they need to be thought of in a different way, because it affects them. So I'm asking you today to please take into consideration what everyone goes through to put food on the table every day, and what everyone goes through to put a roof over their head, and what everyone goes through when they put their kids to bed at night, because it's hard being a parent. So the parents need your help. That means that you have an obligation to vote yes for this program. You all said you wanted to wait for the studies, the findings, and the studies have come out. It's the best thing for the Bays, it's the best thing for the people, and it's the best thing for Southampton town. Thank you very much.
All right, I got a couple more cards in. So George K. is next, followed by Nicole Aldrich. Oh, did I skip somebody? No? Yeah, George, you're next, and Nicole Aldrich will follow.
My name is George K. I live in East Quogue. I've worn a few different hats. I'm very old. What's going to happen in the future isn't going to affect me as much, but I'm concerned with what I have been involved with. I'm the commander of the Peconic Bay Power Squadron. That's a national organization designed to help people in the boating and so forth. What's happening to boating out here? How much more can our Peconic Bay handle? The traffic, the boating, the boaters. Can it be increased a great deal? The millennium, the young people, are they volunteering? We have very volunteers out. Are they going to volunteer? They don't volunteer. They want to get everything paid for everything. They're not coming along and doing the things that people out here have done for years and volunteering to make this work. There's a lot of things you have to consider in the future when you put something like that up there. What is it going to do in general to a lot of areas? Police department, fire department. Pay people now? You're going to have to pay it because young people don't volunteer, and they're coming out here to live out here in those places. There's going to be problems. On the water, lack of marinas, lack of boat spaces. People want to boat, don't know how to boat. There's a lot of things to consider. I don't know which way you should go, but there can be good parts, and there can be bad parts. I hope you make the right decision. It doesn't affect me. I just had my 60th high school reunion. I'm gone. I'm over the hill. Good luck to you guys.
All right. All right. Nicole, you're going to be followed by Kathy Seeliger. Okay, go ahead.
Hi, guys. Happy holidays. This is my last chance to speak to you on behalf of the Hills. Sorry, I have a little cold. I strongly urge for you to vote yes for this company because they will truly help our community in so many ways that the list is just endless. And there's just one last thing that I wanted to point out to you. There are so many parents, mothers and fathers and teachers and people in the community that vote yes, but they are too scared to stand up and say something because of the opposing side. There were about 10 parents that I know that were at the last board meeting, and not one of them stood up, but they all are on the side for the Hills. So I just want you guys to know from my standpoint as a mom and the other parents in the school district, they all want this to work out. So please take that into consideration. Thank you.
Okay, Kathy Seeliger, followed by Marissa Bridge.
Hi, my name is Kathy Seeliger. I'm speaking as a mother of 4 children in East Quogue. I'm speaking as an environmentalist, and I'm speaking as a business owner. I am seeing only good things to come from the Hills development. As a parent, I'm seeing good things for the school district. I'm seeing more tax revenue for the schools. I'm seeing perhaps some programs being restored that were taken away due to budgetary reasons. I'm speaking as an environmentalist. The studies have been done with my tax money funding this. If we're going to have a study and me as the public is going to fund it, I don't understand why we wouldn't go with the findings. I'm a little amazed at that. But, and I'm also speaking as a business owner in East Quogue. I've been there for 24 years on Main Street. I have a good business, but we have a lot of struggles in the town of East Quogue. There's no parking, amongst other things. But, so I'm speaking on behalf of those 3 things, but ultimately my number one thing I'd like to say is we have a wonderful opportunity here. This is 2017. I know maybe golf courses got a bad rap back when, but there is so much science supporting what they're going to do here. There's so much technology. This is not like golf clubs, golf courses back when they were polluting the environment. We have an opportunity to have an incredible development using state-of-the-art technology to actually help our waterways, to help our town, to help our school district, and I think there's really only one choice. And if anybody can, after all these facts, still say they're going to vote against it, I really need to have a conversation with them, and I really need to know why. I just do not see one negative with this, and that's all I want to say. We have a wonderful opportunity in East Quogue. Most towns never get an opportunity like this, to have a company come in and do such a quality project and really help the town. And I urge you to vote yes. Thank you.
Okay, Marissa Bridge is next, followed by Andrea Spilka.
Hello, my name is Marissa Bridge. I'm a resident of East Quogue. There are many people who are against the Hills who cannot be here today due to the time of this meeting, but they have been writing letters to the editor and attending meetings for 4 years. It is truly amazing to hear so many people in favor of handing over our community to a developer who stands to make $500 million. As you know, there is a recently discovered tainted water situation in Hampton Bays. If something similar were to happen in East Quogue, due to the construction or maintenance of the proposed Hills at Southampton project, the Magathy and Lloyd aquifers will be contaminated forever. At this point in time, there is no way to purify an aquifer that has been poisoned. Please take this into consideration when voting on whether or not to approve the Hills PDD. Thank you.
All right. So this is the last word. We'll go to Andrea Spilka. This is the last card. Oh, no, there's more cards. Not done yet. Wishful thinking, right? All right, Andrea, you are now followed by Jeff Seaman.
First of all, let me thank the entire town board and all the people who've been coming out time and time again. Whether you're for or against it, it shows that the community cares, and we certainly do. I'm President, Andrea Spilka, I'm President of the Southampton Town Civic Coalition, and it is a coalition of civic organizations, and I do worry a little bit that civic organizations and the environmental organizations that are opposed to the hills, and there are quite a few of them, are getting a bad rap. We've stood for protection of this area for as long as I've been working on this. It's more than 10 years, but the others have been at it much longer. I was the newbie 10 years ago. So I think it's important to keep that in mind because we are opposed to the hills. And we're opposed to it because as far as we can see, the environment and the whole Long Island economy is based on our water. And you can't have good water if you don't have good land planning. And in this case, we feel like if you protect the hills by not building a golf course, and specifically, not a development, but a golf course on this, that you will be protecting the water in the long run. The unintended consequences are very frightening, and as Marissa just mentioned, we only have one source of water. The other thing I did want to mention is that and remind everyone that there are alternatives, and there have been shown to be better in many cases than the development that the developer is proposing. I do ask the town board once again to please have the political will just to say no. And again, the community, as always, will work with you to make this the best project on this land. Frankly, a private golf course was not considered a need under the PDD legislation. Thank you very much.
Okay, Jeff Seaman, you will be followed by Paul Grosser.
Thank you, board members. This afternoon, we're moving toward the end of the CEQA process. I'm a golf course superintendent, and I'm certified, and I'm also a certified environmental professional. And I've done hundreds of environmental reviews as an environmental scientist and planner, including golf courses. I prepared the integrated turf health management plan for the hills, and my colleagues at other golf courses throughout the island recognized that as the most advanced land management plan for any golf course that we have on the island and perhaps on the state. I'd like to just point out a few of the pesticides that we're all talking about because New York State classifies 14,400 pesticides usable on Long Island, and we've reduced it to corn gluten, cinnamon oil, garlic oil, iron in a product called Fiesta because the high iron will poison a weed, but because it kills it, it's classified as a pesticide. Beneficial nematodes, those are microorganisms, and bacillus, another microorganism that we're inoculating into the soil in order to attack certain fungi. There are about 11 synthetic pesticides out of that 14,400, 600 chemicals that we have requested for use only if the town land management department agrees to it. Now, I'm the only hybrid that you have. My credentials as both environmental planner and scientist and certified golf course superintendent aren't easily matched. It took me 30 years to reach this through education, training, and scientific programs that my schools have put me through, my industry has put me through. And my colleagues and I that have worked on this project for 4 years are cognizant of the fact that this is not a popularity contest. This is not a he said, she said, or I believe or don't believe the science. This is a secret process. And the finding statement and the local law that I have read are so neatly bound. I compliment your staff. I compliment all of the people involved that have brought all of this up to the surface to where it's got to be. But I would find it extremely difficult as a secret analyst to recommend anything other than a positive vote on that finding statement and local law. But thank you. Thank you for your patience. Thank you for your openness as a resident of the town. I greatly appreciate everybody's input throughout this process.
Thank you. That was Paul Grosser. No, that was all right. That was Jeff. Okay. Paul Grosser, you're up next, followed by Brian Grogan.
Good afternoon, Board.
Hey, Paul.
You've seen me before?
Once or twice.
As you know, I want to talk about the groundwater, in particular the fertigation aspect of this project right now. We've got to recognize that there is contaminated groundwater at the Hills site. The Suffolk County Water Authority well field there, there's actually 2 wells. One has been shut down completely. The other one is blended. The water quality in that well is somewhere between 12 and 14 milligrams per liter of nitrogen. It cannot be used on its own without being blended. There is groundwater contamination there. It's the result of the farm fields upstream that have been there for 70 or 80 years. And with preservation, they're going to continue to be there. Hopefully, best management practices will help to reduce that in the future. But this is there, and ultimately it's going to go into Weesuck Creek and Shinnecock Bay. The idea of the fertigation is to use this water to fertilize the golf course, thereby reducing the amount of fertilizer that needs to be put on the golf course from bags of fertilizer as opposed to the groundwater. We proposed this 2 years ago. In the last 2 years, it was considered, oh, maybe this is experimental or innovative. Well, since then, Indian Island is now using the same concept to take treated wastewater and use it on the golf course there in place of fertilizer. The town of Huntington, I saw in today's news, they just got a grant from New York State to do just that with effluent from one of their wastewater treatment plants. Pine Hills Golf Course up in Massachusetts uses groundwater that's been contaminated by a sewage treatment plant and is using that to fertilize their golf course. And we know University of California is got a project going out there where they're taking contaminated groundwater and using it to fertilize row crops. So this has evolved in the last 2 years. It will continue to evolve. And we expect Discovery Land to continue to evolve and improve their process as the technologies improve. This is not something that's stagnant in time. It is moving, it is improving, and you've got a commitment from Discovery Land to clean it up. So in reality, we've got an opportunity here to literally remove a ton of nitrogen a year from the groundwater system. And as other people said, it's an opportunity. If we don't take advantage of it, it's going to stay there and ultimately end up in Shinnecock Bay. With that, again, I'd like to thank the board. I know you've put in a lot of time and effort in trying to digest all the information that's available. I'm sure you'll come to a good decision. Thank you.
Thanks. All right, Brian Grogan is next, followed by Wayne Bruin.
I'd like to address the town board one last time with respect to the proposed wastewater treatment system for the hills. We've been continually evolving this as this design went on. It started out with innovative alternative systems. It progressed to better innovative alternative systems. It then went to a full-on sewage treatment plant. We're still at this full formal sewage treatment plant that's not a requirement of Suffolk County. It's voluntarily being used by Discovery for this project to further improve our wastewater treatment. We'll utilize the best available technology to get us down to below drinking water levels of nitrogen, which is far beyond the innovative alternative system can go. So again, we're making every effort we can to make this the best system we possibly can. And we've done so at the will of the board and comments we've received throughout this process. So again, I'd just like to say that we are trying to make this the best we can, and this I think will be a very good solution if this is approved. Thank you.
All right. Next up is Wayne Bruin. Wayne will be followed by Ed DeVita.
Good afternoon, board members. As you know, I represent DLV Quogue, LLC, and I'm here in support of the two resolutions that you have on your agenda today. We appreciate this impromptu public hearing, as you have consistently had impromptu public hearings throughout this process. We also want to thank you for all your efforts, particularly your staff, your consultants over this process. As you know, this project is the culmination of not just 2 or 3 years of planning. This goes back 30 years of planning by this community, by this town. Taxpayers' funds to prepare studies, comprehensive plan studies, and the like. This particular landowner sought to develop this property 12 years ago. Started this process to develop the property 12 years ago. Within that process, the town adopted a moratorium, undertook a study at taxpayers' expense, and adopted, through the seeker process, a finding statement that found the best alternative for this site is an application that would be processed by this board as a PDD application for a resort development. Our client, as you know, came to this project approximately 5 years ago as a result of the town's comprehensive plan. They did not come here because they thought this was a great spot to develop. They were invited to come to the site by the town's comprehensive plan. We have been working consistently over the last 5 years to implement that comprehensive plan. In addition to the previous finding statement this board has adopted, we're now at a juncture where you will be considering another finding statement after review of a second environmental impact statement, where we've considered all the alternatives, we considered all the environmental impacts. We're also at a juncture of considering the approval of the PDD application. Just want to remind you that the PDD process, as stated in the zoning code, is, quote unquote, to facilitate increased flexibility to achieve more desirable development through the use of more creative and imaginative design of residential and mixed use than is presently achievable under conventional land use techniques and zoning regulations, and to preserve, adapt, and improve existing open space, land uses, and communities consistent with the recommendations of the town comprehensive plan. I submit to you today, after 4 years, many, many hours of study, that this application before you, the finding statement that is before you, which is based on the record that all 5 board members have adopted, the final environmental impact statement is the record before the board from which you're to derive the finding statement and to act on this application. I submit that these resolutions implement the findings of the final environmental impact statement and actually fulfill both your comprehensive plan and the code requirements. We ask you to move forward and hopefully you will act consistent with your comprehensive plan in that manner. Thank you.
Okay, Ed DeVita is up next, followed by, looks like, Joey Aronson.
Good afternoon, town board members and members of the public. I'm Ed DeVita. I'm a partner with Discovery Land Company and a property owner at the Hills in East Quogue. I'd like to start with the sincere gratitude for all of you who have engaged and participated in this process. It's included local residents, shopkeepers in the town, town staff, town board, team members of our own, as well as many others. And together we've processed the pre-application, formal application, draft EIS, and final EIS. Many of you have provided substantive comments along the way. and we worked together, refining the plan, turning it into something that we're truly proud of. Among the many features of this proposed plan are that it is the net total preserved natural area is over 500 acres. The lowest nitrogen load of all the alternatives proposed, and it's a net nitrogen negative project. 7.5 million in taxes will be generated each year. A quarterly groundwater quality program with a commitment for nitrogen and pesticide levels to stay below response levels. No school-age children will be enrolled in the East Quogue School. And most important, the project's in full conformance with the East Quogue Land Use Plan and GEIS, as well as the town's PDD zoning ordinance. I'd like to make a few comments about process. I went back through my notes, and we were actually first introduced to the project in 2011. At that time, we were given a copy of the town's PDD provisions, some detailed application procedures and timelines and procedures that relate to the PDD process. We met face-to-face with the then town board supervisor and town board members and members of the staff of the planning department, and many of those are still around today. And at that time, the PDD process and the intent was described to us in detail. Of particular interest was a new local law that had just been enacted as we got involved. This was local law number 14 of 2011, enacted on May 11, 2011. This new law instituted a pre-application public hearing process. In the law, it states that the legislative intent is to strike an important balance between the need for community input and the concern for protecting both applicants as well as town staff from expending unnecessary time and resources on a PDD application. The law goes on to state that the pre-application strives to set forth a process that provides greater predictability and accountability for the applicant, for the constituents, for the town staff, and for the town board alike. Put in my plain words, in January of 2014, when the town board adopted the resolution approving the pre-application for this project, they found the project to be a worthy project, supported by the planning board at that time. A project that warrants the corresponding investment and resources, both by the town and the applicant. Since approval of the pre-application, our team has listened to every substantive comment that's been provided, and we've refined our plan in response to those comments. We fulfilled and exceeded the conditions that are stated in the town board's pre-application approval. And today we are indeed very proud of the application. We also recently learned that even more public benefits have been unilaterally added to the local law proposed by the town board, including benefits that the overall town can appreciate as a whole. These benefits include requiring that 20% of the golf tee times be established for residents of the town, with a maximum fee not to exceed the highest rate of Suffolk County public courses. There's no other golf courses within the town that provide such public access. Our business plan had not previously contemplated such a subsidy. But at Discovery, we enjoy being held accountable. It makes a difference for us. It's what makes us competitive and sets us apart from our competition. Now we ask the town board to join together with us in accountability, to please consider the thorough process and high standard of quality and resources that we put forth in this application, all in conformance and all in reliance of the codes and laws of the town of Southampton. We humbly request your approval of the finding statement and the local law. Thank you.
Okay, Joey Aronson, followed by Mike Meldman.
Hi, my name is Joey Aronson. I've been a partner with Discovery Land Company for many years, and I'd like today to speak on just two items that are, have specific relevance to me and my involvement with the project. One is something that our counsel Wayne Bruin mentioned at the beginning. I was involved, when we first got involved with this property back in 2011, and the reason that we got involved with it to begin with was because of the GEIS and the fact that the golf course was a recommended use. So that was a strategic business decision on our part. We are businessmen, as people have pointed out, but that was the reason that we made the choice to pursue the project, because Wayne laid it out to us very carefully that that was something that we had on our side. So that's the first point. The second point is, you know, I've been involved in all of our communities throughout the history of it and of them, and I really want to talk about the fact that, you know, we have less than 1% of the families that live in our communities have kids in the schools. So it's just really important to stress that the deed restriction, which is something that we've never had to do before, we've actually taken a step further, which should virtually eliminate any of the kids going to the schools in this project. So, you know, that's spoken from someone that's seen it, you know, seen all of our project, has the data, and that shouldn't, you know, fall on deaf ears. Thank you very much.
Okay, Mike Meldman, followed by Mark Hissey.
Hi. I just want to say we came here in peace. We want peace. We are, you know, we feel that this process should be one of the great examples of how the process works. I mean, we took our plan, we listened to the community. You know, we should be celebrating a victory of the process for the environment, for the school, for everyone. But for some reason, you know, I have a very hollow feeling in my stomach, like the process has let us down, or is about to let us down. And so all I really want to say to the people of East Quogue, that we are here to stay, we're here for the long run. We bought this property under, you know, the pretense that it was zoned, and you know, we're allowed to do what we're going to do. We just spent the last 5 years, you know, trying to make it better. I think most of the people feel we have. Some of the people who count may not, which is unfortunate. But whatever we do for as of right, we will continue to respect the environment. We will do what we can for the East Quogue School, and we're going to be a good citizen for East Quogue.
So next up is Mark Hissey, followed by Mary Pizan.
Good afternoon, Town Board. Mark Hissey, Discovery Land Company. I'm here today to thank all of the scientists, engineers, hydrogeologists, geologists, ecologists, marine scientists, agronomists, and other professionals with subject matter expertise relating to our project. They've worked on the environmental impact statement and scientific peer reviews that we have worked on over the last few years. I'm also here to thank all of the professional planners who've worked to create and improve upon the town's comprehensive plan over the years. And I'm here to thank the Town Board for providing us with the strict guidelines to meet your requirements for the application. Thank you. You came up with a plan to improve the drinking water quality by remediating existing groundwater conditions, both on-site and off-site. You shared the way to make farming sustainable and to improve the drinking water quality on the East End through the pump and fertilizer plans already well in place in other states. You came up with a plan to protect water quality by creating wastewater and by treating wastewater to drinking water quality. You came up with a plan to clean stormwater runoff using rain gardens, a natural biofilter used in many places around the country. You came up with a plan to improve the wastewater treatment system at the East Quogue School. You designed the integrated turf health management program to protect the water quality based on years of research and practice and actual results here in the town of Southampton. You demanded a reduction in density, and you got it. You demanded the strictest water quality protections, and you got that too. You demanded seasonal occupancy. We delivered that. You demanded investment in the community, and we did that too. You demanded maximum preservation of the property, and that's in place. And you demanded protection of the school. You got that. You got everything you asked for, and we're happy to partner with you on it to provide it. So thank you for doing everything in the best way possible. Thank you for coming up with the best plan possible. And thank you for your commitment to the health and the environment of this fantastic community. We look forward to fulfilling the comprehensive plan, the scientific recommendations, and the wishes of the vast majority of this community. Thank you.
All right, I have one last card, so you get the last
Hope
word.
it's me.
Mary Pizan.
Hi, my name is Mary Pazan. I'm a resident of Hampton Bays. I didn't really plan on speaking today because I've spoken before, and I've heard a lot of the folks here speak previously. So I wanted to point out that I also did an unofficial survey of the folks that I could get in touch with, and I couldn't find one person who was in favor of the hills. I'm sure some of them would be here today, but the working people of Hampton Bays, excuse me, are probably at their jobs today. There's a lot of science on one side of the equation, and there's a lot of science on the other side, and I'm not a scientist, but I do think that it's odd that science can sort of be subject to interpretation, but I would certainly support the science that is being proffered by those who are not being paid by the developer of the property. Clearly, a consultant who's being paid by Discovery is going to speak only in favor of the project and interpret data in favor of the project. I just want to also point out to the board that, this could very well be your legacy here. And if something goes wrong with the project, Discovery goes bankrupt, tax changes affect the housing market, whatever it is, one thing goes wrong with the aquifer, and you will go down in history as the board that damaged the aquifer and ruined it for the people of the East End. So I see that there are a lot of alleged benefits and needs of the people of East Quogue, but many people rely on the aquifer, and the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. So I urge you to vote nay on this project. Thank you.
Apparently, there's one more card. I'm hoping this will be the last.
Hey, how are you all?
Bill Seychel. Bill Seychel, all right.
Hey, look around, great group of people here. You all love this town, right? We all love this town. And some of us are for this and some of us against it. What I just heard was that somebody just took a survey and most of the people were against the hills. By a show of hands, how many people in here are for the hills? How many people in here are for the hills? Just by a show of hands. Okay, for those in the media, thank you. You want to raise your hands again? This way they can count them?
These are four?
Better four. For the hills. For the hills. Raise your hand. All right. I heard another thing during this where, hey, I want to thank the Civic Association. You guys have done some great stuff, okay? You really have. All right. And the Conservation Board, you guys have done great stuff. All right. But I heard somebody thanking everybody and just saying how great everybody was. But then they said, one of the things they said was, thank you for going against the people, the wishes of the people of the town, all right, or against what people wanted in the town. I see you shaking your head. What did they say? What did they say?
Careful. It's just you speaking to us, really.
Okay. Well, I like talking to them, okay? Hey, I think that most of the people in this town are for this project. There was a project like this about 10, 15 years ago. Southampton Pines, and we voted it down. And now instead of a golf course, we have 100 homes. I know that my taxes in that time have doubled, maybe even tripled since that time. There is no real commerce in the town of East Quogue. We need to bring stuff into East Quogue. I think that many scientists have stated their positions here. I can only hope that you guys are going to be voting for the people of East Quogue. That's all.
All right, that's it for the cards. I want to make a motion to close the public portion. I see somebody standing. Okay, I'll make a motion to close public portion.
Second.
Seconded by Councilman Scalera. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so we now will go to the agenda. The first Town Board Resolution 906 of 2017. This is acceptance of finding statement in connection with the zone change application entitled The Hills at Southampton Mixed Use Plan Development District, East Quogue. This is would be the end of the SEQR process. This is the findings based on the FEIS, which is a closed document. The board had wanted to include some regulatory boards, I think the Conservation Board, the Planning Commission, maybe some others, Planning Board, into that. So we have to then amend this to reference the most recent date. Everybody has received a copy of the November 27th updated finding statement that incorporates those board decisions into it, or board recommendations into it. So I will make a motion to amend to strike the September 20th, 17 date and replace it with November 27th, 2017.
Second.
Second by Councilwoman Scalera. This is not the approval. This is just to amend the resolution. All in favor of the amendment?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Abstentions? Okay. So now I'd like to make a motion to approve as amended the finding statement. I know well, let's get a second for discussion purposes. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilman Glinka. I know everybody's had ample time to review it. I want to thank the planning department, and Kyle is over here if you have any questions anybody needs answered, as well as Janice Scher for their work with the board in getting to this point. All of the public who had input at the 4 public hearings on the FEIS. We had substantial public comment. We did our best to incorporate all of that into our finding statement. Is there anybody else to wish to say anything before we vote on the finding statement? Okay, I'll call the vote. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Nay.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Okay, any abstentions? So with 3 yeses, 2 noes, Councilman VA, Councilman Lofstad, the finding statement is approved. Okay, we will. So, as you know, there are 2 pieces to this. There is the finding statement, which completes the SEQR process, and then the actual PDD law. The PDD law is based on the underlying law in the town code that outlines the standards for approval of plan development districts. When it was first enacted, there was a requirement for a supermajority that went onto a public referendum. The public voted to place this supermajority requirement on PDD approvals. So the finding statement requires 3, but this will require 4. I'm going to read the bill for the purpose of discussion, and I know I think every town board member has something they have told me they want to say on this. So this is 1123 of 2017. This is a notice of adoption of a local law to change the zoning district of certain parcels from CR 200, which is basically 5-acre zoning, to the Hills at Southampton Mixed Use Plan Development District, HSMU PDD, for a residential golf course development in East Quogue. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, second by Councilwoman Scalera. Before we go to the town board, Kyle, do you want to say anything in advance, or Janice from the planning department? Okay, Jim, any advisement for the town board before we vote?
No, just remind them that the decision is based, courts would look on
whether the town board members made their decision based on a rational basis and that it was not arbitrary and capricious, and that's what the court's asking. I'm very confident that this board, each member has reviewed it and will make their decision based on a rational basis.
So this proposed local law has within it all of the mitigation that was discussed, all the community benefits that were discussed, all the enforcement mechanisms that have been discussed. This includes the 20% public use, the tea times, 20% per week of the tea times at affordable rates. It has some additional provisions about enforcement, performance bonds, I believe, et cetera. Has the board all had time to review the PDD law? Okay. On the motion, I think, do you want to make your statements before the vote or after the vote?
You should do it before. It substantiates your vote.
Okay. So who wants to go first?
I'll go first.
All right, Councilwoman Lofstad.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for coming out. The decision I make today is not one I take lightly. I've spent hundreds of hours poring over documents, researching, listening to the developer, town hall staff, consultants, local organizations, scientists, and of course our residents, both for and against the project. As I've clearly stated from the beginning of my review, my number one concern has been the effect that this project would have on our aquifer. I have never veered from that statement. All other considerations, such as economic, social, infrastructure, and any other concerns or benefits, were weighed against the impact on our environment. I've never stated specifically how I would come to that decision. I wanted my decision to be based on all pertinent factors, always allowing for new information to assist in my decision, some weighing more heavily than others, but all were included in my consideration. I'd like to start by reminding you of a few of the unanticipated consequences of man's good intentions. A German chemist won the Nobel Prize in Chemistry in 1918 for his invention of a synthetic fertilizer process. Food production for half the world's current population depends upon this method. However, the ultimate cost has been an unanticipated environmental catastrophe in the form of increasingly polluted waterways and oceans. Roundup, whose active ingredient is the world's most widely used weed killer, is now under scrutiny based on a determination by the World Health Organization that glyphosate is a probable carcinogen, citing research linking it to non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. The miracle drug thalidomide was advertised as completely safe for everyone, including mother and child, even during pregnancy, because its developers could not find a dose high enough to even kill a rat. As we all know, thalidomide caused severe birth defects in thousands of children before the drug trials were halted. I mention these only to remind you that rarely is anything foolproof, and sometimes the unintended consequences of good intentions do negate the benefits. I've heard that Discovery wants to be a good neighbor, and I certainly hope they continue to support East Quogue and our fragile environment, no matter what form of development they ultimately pursue. And keep in mind that any other type of development by the applicant would come under the purview of several municipalities, not only limited to those authorities within Southampton Town, which can and should impose criteria to protect this critical area to the maximum extent possible. One important issue to weigh in this decision was the economic benefit to the people of the hamlet of East Quogue and to the school. And yes, although there may be economic relief associated with the proposed project, that dollar amount is based on many variables, not limited to the real estate market, the stock market, and our nationwide economic growth, none of which are ever a given and most certainly will fluctuate over the years. Additionally, the applicant states that no children will attend the East Quogue School and that the PDD would be the better choice due to tax implications for the school district. However, this covenant is not legally binding because according to New York State Education Department, any child who lives in a school district must be allowed to attend that school. Additionally, the case law that could be used by the applicant to support this supposition based on decisions made in the third department would not be controlling in this case because Southampton Town is in the second department. Of course, the nitrogen issue is another of my concerns. It's a fact that our bays and groundwater are degrading at an alarming rate. And although some of the mitigation efforts do sound promising, in a recent analysis, conclusions were offered with qualifiers, such as, all these calculations are, of course, theoretical, and nitrogen calculation is complicated by the attempt to quantify inexact variables. Basing this important decision on theoretical propositions and experimental modeling would be reckless of me. I have great respect for all those who offered opinions about this project, and I appreciate that qualifiers such as these were included so that people can understand that the information presented was not hard fact, but was in reality an analysis based on many assumptions. Additionally, nitrogen calculations for other possible development alternatives were not included in that analysis. The wastewater treatment process proposed by the applicant is also a concern. For one, it's not yet been approved for use in Suffolk County. Also, in 2013, Basswood, which is the company slated to construct the Hills facility, installed a wastewater facility in Texas. That plant malfunctioned, causing local residents to experience nausea, coughing, and respiratory distress. How can we subject our residents to our environment to the chance of a mishap with such significant implications? I'd like to give you some background on this wonder we call our aquifer. It was created between 10 million and 100 million years ago. The Earth itself created a natural machine that's provided clean water, not only for us to drink, but to feed our ponds, creeks, and bays, and has been working for millions upon hundreds of millions of years. In spite of man's ongoing assault on the environment, our aquifer is still doing its job. Do we really want to disarrange this perfect, naturally assembled machine that's purified our water for eons? When do we say enough is enough? Excavation down towards our aquifer and along the footprint of this project, the aggregate of homes, pools, club condos, spa, pro shop, tennis courts, paving, landscaping, clubhouse, underground parking, maintenance facilities, fuel storage, and of course, 100 acres of golf course, will change the makeup of the land and will impact the functionality of our sole source aquifer. I'm looking at the impacts of this project for the near future, but also looking 10, 20, even 50 years ahead. And I think this project could have been a good one if sited in a less sensitive location, but it's not a good project in this location. The health and fate of our aquifer, and one of the last and largest pieces of open space, must not be decided on theories, modeling, suppositions, or even good intentions. It must be decided on what's best for our children, our grandchildren, and their grandchildren. I respect my fellow board members' opinions. I respect the time and effort that the developer, town staff, consultants, and others have contributed to this process. I respect the opinions of all of you who are so passionate about this issue. I understand that the loss of the perceived economic windfall, especially as a boon to the school district, is a concern. And I'm always willing to work with Hamlet business owners, local organizations, and of course, school district representatives to find ways to address issues as we move forward. I'm making my decision based on the following criteria: proposed mitigation efforts and their ability to counteract the project's impact on the environment, determining if this project has intrinsic value and benefit, and determining if the community benefits offered are commensurate with the future benefits that the developer will acquire if the project moves forward. After my exhaustive research and review of the project, I agree with the Southampton Town Conservation Board opinion dated November 15th, 2017, which states in part, the Conservation Board is concerned with regards to the enormity of the Hills project, particularly with respect to its possible effects on wetlands, pine barrens, and groundwater quality. Hoping that all the calculations, theories, and modeling are correct and will work as speculated, that's not a chance I'm willing to take in this critically sensitive location. I do not believe the mitigation measures proposed for the project alleviate the negative impact on the environment. Additionally, I don't believe that the project, which is a private resort and private or possibly semi-private golf course, has intrinsic value and benefit. And although the community benefits offered are numerous, I don't believe they are commensurate with the future benefits and revenue that the developer will gain should this project be approved. And finally, according to the U.S. Geological Survey, all groundwater is not equal. Our aquifer is priceless, and therefore, based on the above stated reasons, my vote will be no to the Hills PDD.
Okay, who's up next?
You want to work down the row here?
Who
All right,
would like
then
to go
I'll
next?
go, because I've drunk a lot of water and I really... Thank you. I apologize in advance, and I beg your indulgence. This is a fairly long opinion. I've had a lot of people, Jessica, I'm seeing you looking at me, who have asked me for an explanation for how I intend to vote. I intend to vote based on a lot of the criteria in here. It's a sort of a stream of consciousness, and I beg your indulgence. It's about a half an hour, so I hope you indulge me in this. The Hills MUPDD application, can you hear me? Has consumed much time and effort in both the review of the merits, the technicalities of the process, research into claims and statements of both science, community benefits, environmental law, land use history, zoning and planning, use alternatives, and the lengthy public hearings and meetings with those who oppose and support this project. The process formally began, and I'm saying this because I want to put it in context. How I came on this board, I basically inherited, as many of us did, inherited this project. The process formally began with the Town Board Resolution 214-120 entitled Elect to Consider DLV Quogue LLC Development MUPDD Application for the Hills at Southampton Properties in the hamlet of East Quogue. The resolution emerged out of two pre-application hearings on August 27, 2013 and was offered on January 14, 2014. I'll enter this resolution into this record with my comments, but I'd like to read some portions of what that board had at that time elected to consider. Requesting a zone change from CR 200, that's 5-acre zoning, to a mixed-use plan development district, whereas two pre-application public hearings were held either for or against said proposal for the 82 residential units. That's what they were asked to consider at that time. 18-hole golf course and clubhouse on 71 separate lots in East Quogue were heard. And whereas the applicant has proposed a number of purported community benefits, which include increase in tax revenue with no potential impact to the school district, wastewater treatment, construction of sidewalks to access the school where no such sidewalks exist, an unspecified donation of open space preservation, dedication of lands which could be used for the relocation of a historic structure, fire district substation, affordable housing opportunities, and/or a well field, and the applicant needs to include further detailed information about these community benefits so as to determine if they warrant the requested zone change. Clearly to me, what the previous board elected to consider then is not comparable to what this town board has in front of it to consider now. This set in motion the expenditure of massive amounts of funds, time, and town resources that have resulted in thousands of pages of supporting documentation and formal and informal documents that have filled volumes, the review of which can only be imagined in terms of time. For me, this has included consultation with experts, testimony of, and conversations with members of other municipalities regarding similar developments constructed in other communities, conversations with scientific and other related discipline experts, advocacy groups, residents, and the very lengthy review of the formal documentation itself. I have studied many of the methods involved in the actual construction and design methodologies of golf courses, management and practices of comparable development, and the practical and real-world results. In the context of land preservation, I must also note the clearing of over 166 naturally vegetated acres and the impacts on wildlife habitats and water recharge, and the removal of an estimated 350,000 cubic yards of natural surface soil material as part of the proposed golf course development construction. I have reviewed the methods of characterizing wastewater treatment and the resulting empirical data versus modeling and simulation, and the validity history of such and the validation history of such methods, including the confounding variables that cannot be controlled. In short, I believe I've approached my review with an open mind and have attempted to be as comprehensive in my review and analysis as much as is possible within my expertise. It has been stated that Long Island will approach its capacity to build out by the 2020s. It is my opinion that not all land is equal, and that this land being contemplated for development is one of the last large tracts of essentially virgin land that has been characterized and studied and generally found to be important to the protection of our water ecosystems, contributing to the health of both our environment and our economy. The area of Weesett Creek is considered to be one of the most impaired water bodies in the town of Southampton and lies over a watershed system that directly contributes to it. Given that the best scientific analyses cannot offer conclusive and definitive results regarding nutrient contribution overall, largely because many of the stated conclusions rely on model simulation and broadly qualified variables, and in part because both the hydrology and geology of the area cannot be sufficiently defined and are also variable in their nature. Expert opinions offered or commissioned have been generally broadly qualified, because it is clear that no definitive conclusion can be made based on partial and less than empirical evidence. In my opinion, this has resulted in clear differences of opinions between experts in relevant fields, and I am compelled to be conservative in my review and give the greater weight in my decision to those opinions that suggest a greater impact of those practices that could potentially and negatively affect both human health and the environment. Past recommendations by venerable institutions such as Cornell University, independent institutions and organizations, studies conducted by Stony Brook University personnel, all suggest the importance of preserving this land. Additionally, any comprehensive review must consider the federal statutes pertaining to the archaeological protections and rights of the indigenous people and the heritage of the Shinnecock Nation. To that end, over past decades, attempts to preserve these lands have been conducted, including Suffolk County and the town of Southampton, in recognition of these very real considerations. In fact, this current board offered to purchase this property for $35 million, which is significantly higher than the applicant's original purchase price, with the goal of preservation, a number that represents over a third of the yearly average CPF fund balance, in recognition of the importance that this particular area, partially within the Pine Barrens core area, and the role it plays in consideration of water quality as a contributory source of safe drinking water. This offer was rejected by the applicant. In this context, I have to consider the potential future use and management of any construction and use of this property, and must note that human activity and history is a related concern, and that given that history is very relevant to future generations and subsequently to my decision. While there have been numerous offers of implementation of mitigating technologies, some of which carry with them good and provable histories, the applicant identified Basswood BioBair wastewater treatment system as the system they will use in wastewater treatment for the proposed project as proposed in the FEIS presented by the applicant. The application notes that the technology proposed was patented under U.S. Patent 738-7733. After reviewing this patent, I find that the system patent was filed in 2006 and also filed under an international patent and lists Basswood as the assignee. I could find no third-party verification of the system's stated performance with the application. I subsequently contacted our county legislator, Bridges Fleming, who in turn contacted the Suffolk County Department of Health Services to verify if the system had been reviewed and authorized and to inquire about it. I have included it here, and it will be part of the record. On June 6, 2017, Christina Capobianco wrote, Legislator Fleming, the Suffolk County Department of Health Services not received an application for this proposed project known as the Hills at Southampton East Quogue. Despite our request at this point in time, Suffolk County Department of Health Services does not have the basic minimum details for the new technology, which would be required to review potential applicability of the technology for development in Suffolk County. The applicant, developer, engineer, and equipment manufacturer met on January 18, 2017 with Tanima Adhaya of the Office of Wastewater Management to conceptually discuss wastewater treatment for the proposed project. The manufacturer described a new wastewater treatment technology which was to be utilized for the proposed development. The Office of Wastewater Management requested details of the process kinetics, data, and supporting documentations for review. Wastewater Management clarified that a thorough review of the technology and associated design documents and supporting data would be performed prior to acceptance of the technology. Review of the proposed development would be done under a formal application. On May 3, 2017, the Suffolk County Department of Health Services received an email with a one-page attachment showing the footprint of the system from the applicant's engineer. No details of the technology were provided. The applicant's engineer wanted to know whether the configured footprint would satisfy the department's requirement. The Suffolk County Department of Health Services Office of Wastewater Management responded to the email indicating that a proposal, as submitted, would not meet the department's requirements, e.g. sketch only, with insufficient details, expansion area not shown, etc. The Office of Wastewater Management has not yet received the requested details for the technology, which I confirmed again today, or an application for the proposed development. We are happy to review the technology in advance of any formal application and await a submission package from the applicant's engineer. Let us know if you need any additional information or would like to discuss further. Thank you. Christina Capibayanco, CPA, Deputy Commissioner, Suffolk County Department of Health Services. I must question why the applicant did not fully apply its attention to this issue. Central and critical to the issues surrounding water quality, and certainly one of the most divisive within the community. While it is within the town board's purview to require use of Suffolk County Department of Health Services permitted commercial alternatives, including as per the Suffolk County Department of Health Services June 2013 Task 9 report, Nitrix, Aquapoint, BioClear, Westec, Aero, Best, Chromaglass, SBR, MBR, only one, Nitrix, was found to discharge consistently at less than 10 milligrams per liter. However, the Suffolk County Department of Health Services also noted that alkalinity and biochemical oxygen demand breakthrough from the denitrification module are two issues that may require further examination. I should also note that the EPA and the Suffolk County Department of Health Services have stricter discharge maximums when discharging into impaired water bodies. No amount of community benefit, whether offered or implied, can distract from this. While I find the phrase community benefit to be a completely subjective term, I find little benefit in the private membership golf course. Given the extent of actual local benefits derived by similar projects, I find little economic benefit particularly commensurate over the long term either within the hamlet of East Quogue or the broader areas within the town of Southampton, particularly when considered against the potential environmental impacts which contribute directly to the broader economy of the town of Southampton. Both the impacts of the actual construction and an uncertain nutrient waste and chemical pesticide, particularly organophosphates and chemical vegetation control contribution in terms of actual daily human load from both guests and members, as well as property operational staff, I consider the potential health of our citizens paramount and having the greater weight in my decision. I also find that while public opinion is very important, I cannot conclude that there is overwhelming support or opposition to this proposal numerically, and I find that both the sources and methodologies used on both sides questionable enough to suggest that neither give greater weight over the other. The concerns regarding nutrient loading are numerous, but from my review, contribution to increasing levels of nitrates to drinking water sources and the subsequent human health impacts, as well as the impacts on our surface waters and resultant impacts on the health of our ecosystems and economy at large are of primary concern. Congress passed the Federal Safe Drinking Water Act in 1974. The U.S. Environmental Protection Agency was given responsibility for setting drinking water standards for all states, and each state became responsible for enforcing these standards. In New York State, the Department of Health regulates all public water supplies serving 25 or more people. Because potential health risks are often unknown or hard to predict, many drinking water standards are set at some fraction of the level of, quote, no observed adverse health effects, unquote. In general, the greater the uncertainty about potential health effects, the greater the margin of safety built into the standard. The current standard for safe drinking water containing nitrate as nitrogen is 10 milligrams per liter. A 1977 report by the National Academy of Science concluded that, quote, available evidence on the occurrence of blue baby syndrome in infants tends to confirm a value near 10 milligrams per liter nitrate as nitrogen as a maximum no observed adverse health effect level, but there is little margin of safety in this value. 10 years later, during the review of the proposed 10 milligrams per liter standard, the Science Advisory Board of the Reagan administration EPA had an even harsher assessment, finding that the agency selects a margin of safety that excludes, for all practical purposes, protection of the sensitive members of the population. This assessment was subsequently ignored by that commission and maintained the current standard we have today. Health authorities in several other countries have set significantly lower standards, between 4 to 6 milligrams per liter. Nitrate may be removed from water using treatment processes such as ion exchange, distillation, and reverse osmosis, among others, but is costly, particularly starting with higher concentrations. Almost 70% of Suffolk County community supply wells were rated as high or very high for susceptibility to nitrate, with a lower population density accounting for reduced contaminant prevalence ratings in the central and eastern parts of the county. In fact, the Suffolk County Water Authority itself states that it sponsored the bill that protected the Central Pine Barrens. These measures have resulted in the preservation of over 100,000 acres of land in central Suffolk, which overlies one portion of Long Island's federally designated sole source aquifer, and that they continue to provide resources to protect this unique resource. I also note that one of the original rationales for establishing this entire property under 5-acre zoning was substantially based on the adopted Cornell study that strongly considered nitrogen contribution and its sources as it relates to water quality protection. I find that it is well within reasonable action to impose sufficient restrictions for use under current zoning to meet those recommendations. It is my opinion that given these uncertainties and the uncertainties of actual confirmable nitrate and other contaminant contribution as estimated must be carefully considered and weighed heavily. I think it is important to note that the Long Island South Shore Estuary Reserve Eastern Bays Project, Nitrogen Loading Sources and Management Options, a report prepared by Stony Brook University School of Marine and Atmospheric Sciences this year, noted that modeling determined that the relative contribution of land-based nitrogen load to the 3 Eastern Bays study area was generally 65% wastewater, 20% fertilizer, and 15% atmospheric deposition. It was shown that groundwater was responsible for the transport of more than 90% of the nitrogen load in all sub-watersheds, except the Western Merchants Bay and Quogue Bay, where 2 watersheds with the largest nitrogen loads on a per-volume basis, the longest water residence times, the poorest water quality with regard to harmful algal blooms, dissolved oxygen, and water clarity. In a more recent report by the Stony Brook University School of Marine and Atmospheric Sciences, an analysis of nitrogen loading rates specific to the Hills MUPDD concluded the following under future considerations. All of these calculations are, of course, theoretical, and to the extent to which actual nitrogen yields on the property, on the Hills property, match these calculations will be partly a function of the extent to which the characteristics of development matches the details and practices outlined in the PDD. Moreover, as more detailed information of the manner in which the Hills PDD may be developed and operated become available, and as actual data is collected, these hypothetical scenarios and calculations could and probably should be refined. If the Hills PDD is approved and the Hills at Southampton is developed, stringent enforcement, along with careful monitoring of the development, watershed, groundwater, surface waters, and surrounding ecosystems will be required to assure optimal environmental outcomes. I recently received an email from Mr. Edward DeVita, a partner at Discovery Land Company, after a meeting I had with him earlier this week. While we were comparing issues and professions involved with simulation modeling, it was an enjoyable conversation. He recalled the work his father had conducted while employed with JPL, working on the Voyager program. I also had worked at NASA during my professional career, and we found this in common. I had spoken about model predictability during that meeting, and in his email, Mr. DeVita recalled some conversations he had had with his father regarding the Voyager program, writing, "Their models were never perfect, nor were their predictions perfect." And this is something I think all engineers and people who do this find in common. Mr. DeVita further wrote, "My father and I discussed in some detail how the overuse of nitrogen fertilizer is a big problem, and our teams have an opportunity to do something to improve that." Mr. DeVita went on to write, "I sent him the attached paper, Stefan et al. 2015, showing that nitrogen is currently a high-risk variable and beyond its planetary boundary. I explained to my father that I'm personally committed to having a role in reducing the value of biogeochemical flow of nitrogen. I want to start at the local scale, the Hills, and use that work to link to regional and global scales, residential and golf projects on Long Island, agriculture on Long Island, residential and golf projects worldwide, agriculture worldwide." Forgive me, I'm drying up a little. During our meeting, I had spoken of the scale of the Hills project and how I was heartened to hear that Discovery may be purchasing a pre-existing golf course to validate their statements regarding water quality on a property that could serve as a baseline to prove those statements. And I'm all in with it for that. I really want to do that. Largely because it had already, to validate their statements regarding water quality on a property that could serve as a baseline to prove those statements. largely because it had already been built upon and had a history of monitoring and data of its current condition. I further noted that it was far better scientific method to build upon land already altered than land that is a natural environment that has never been built upon. Mr. DeVita denied that Discovery had purchased a pre-existing golf course despite some press articles quoting otherwise. In my opinion, this seems to be the cart before the horse. Should we conduct a grand experiment with our drinking water sources and environment considering these uncertainties? While I applaud and support Mr. DeVita's vision, I also note that while he considers the Hill project to be a local scale project to me, and I believe to many of our town residents, we recognize both the enormity of the scale of this project to Southampton town and the potential of non-recoverable harm to both our natural resources, health, and economy. In fact, the author of both the above referenced reports in response to a local press article, this is what I referred to previously, Dr. Gobler wrote in part to a letter to the editor dated September 21st. While the headline of the article regarding my report was titled Gobler's latest assessment states that the Hills PDD would generate least amount of oxygen, this was in 27 East, Chris Gobler goes on to state, this does not accurately represent my findings. After Dr. Gobler's intense study of the subject, his review of the science clearly leaves him without a clear conclusion. In my review, I believe that the public should be made aware of this contradiction. I also feel it is important to bring to the public's attention a quote from Mr. Mark Hissey, a vice president with the Discovery Land Company, that appeared in the Independent newspaper dated October 4th, 2017, page 15, entitled, quote, "Kick in the Teeth," unquote. This is from the article. Hissey said that the project will, quote, absolutely move forward, unquote, even if the pending application is denied. Discovery can build up to 160 homes by right. Hissey said his company will buy a nearby golf course if need be. Quote, all the benefits we were prepared to provide will be off the table, Hissey warned. While some may interpret this as an implied threat, Mr. Hissey should be aware that any project proposed under this scenario must and will be required to be permitted under the laws of Southampton and the County of Suffolk, as well as the State of New York, and that it is well within these authorities' purview to require strict environmental controls. I am encouraged that Discovery is willing to buy, or may already have bought, an existing golf course, at least according to Mr. Hissey, and would only hope that they can recognize the importance of preserving this land that has never been built on and is within our aquifer overlay district. One can only expect that a company that insists it would be a good neighbor will recognize that doing the right thing will go a long way in demonstrating that they are indeed willing to be such good neighbors. It is this uncertainty I must consider with the utmost seriousness. I find that the risks imposed by the unpredictability of the impacts to both the environment and water quality, and the uncertainty of actual nitrogen loading and restrictions and subsequent enforcement of mandated restrictions and controls do not offer a satisfactory probability of predictable outcome. In regards to opinions offered regarding review of relevant case law and analysis provided by counsel, that it is likely that the covenants proposed asserting occupancy restrictions for seasonal use would only be upheld as valid and enforceable, I note that counsel also states that there's no certainty in litigation. The applicant relied on 2 appellate division cases to support the proposal to limit occupancy to no more than 183 days per year. Both cases were decided in the 3rd Judicial Department, and because Southampton and all of Long Island, Nassau, and Suffolk counties are within the 2nd Judicial Department, these cases are not controlling and cannot be considered as case law as a matter of law. Even if Ruback's Groves Camper Association Incorporated versus Moore were declined in the 2nd Judicial Department, it is distinguishable from the applicant's proposal on the facts. That case, Ruback, involved leases and not fee ownership. As a result, a landlord-tenant relationship was addressed and decided on the basis of landlord-tenant statute. In Turner versus Cesar, decided in the 3rd Judicial Department, the trial court decided in favor of the neighbor who wanted the restricted covenant upheld. These neighbors held title from the original deeds drafted in 1923 by the same grantor, Norwich Waterworks. These deeds contained language restricting residents on those lots to summer residents. The challenge to this restriction was begun in 1997 when Mr. Turner sued to prevent Mr. Cesar from using his residence next door year-round. The trial court sided with Mr. Cesar, the defendant, holding that the word summer referred to time of use. Here the court stated that there were triable issues of fact and reversed on that basis, returning the case back to the trial court. So the second case is distinguishable on the law because the decision of the trial court as to the interpretation of an ambiguous term is not known. Thus, this cannot be precedent. Given this uncertainty, I must consider all potential outcomes in my decision. Most of the state's more than 700 school districts distribute their taxes among segments of several municipalities, many of which have different levels of assessment. The number of municipal segments in a school district can range from 1 to 15 or more. The current equalization rate within the town of Southampton is 100%, meaning that the assessments equal market value. As it is the state that impacts tax distribution among all public schools, there is no certainty that any one school will substantially benefit or lose revenue from local assessments. I should also note that the Town of Southampton Conservation Board that has offered opinions regarding the Hills MUPDD states, while the applicant offering to purchase Pine Barrens credit as part of its impact mitigation and public benefit strategy, there are not sufficient remaining Pine Barrens credit in the East Quogue School District to achieve this goal. Consequently, any transfer of credits across school district boundaries would not have the intended benefits of offsetting the effect of greater intensity of the development within the affected school boundaries, district boundaries. Recently, there has been some discussion regarding the use of fertigation. Simply put, this is a proposed method of using wastewater collected in chemically conditioned and contaminant reservoirs to irrigate vegetation and applied generally by spray or drip processes. The process is sometimes associated with phytoremediation, which can be simply defined as the efficient use of plants to remove, detoxify, and mobilize environmental contaminants in a growth matrix, soil or water or sediments, through the natural, biological, chemical, or physical activities and the process of the plants. It is important to note that the type of vegetation employed in this technique is important in that not all plants fix nitrogen, in particular most turf grasses, from atmospheric deposition, and that other contaminants held by root systems are still retained in the leaching cycle without removal from the discharge area. The addition of utilizing high nitrogen concentration in groundwater, either preconditioned or additive, is unproven. In many cases, there are a number of harmful chemical issues that are brought into play when this type of water is to be utilized. It is often high in sodium salts, which poison the soil and damages plants. It is often high in bicarbonate, sealing upper layers of soil, hindering water penetration, and it is usually high in pH, preventing nutrients from becoming soluble and utilized by plants. The mitigation of this problem often involves a system injection process using sulfuric or other acid, and it is particularly impactful when sulfuric fertilizers, typically used with liquid fertilizers, are employed. Additionally, the control and mitigation of accumulated scale throughout the delivery mechanisms require maintenance that includes other chemical additives. Dr. Gobler recently updated his original report referenced previously to offer estimates on nitrogen contribution in the context of fertigation. Given this information and the wide variation of effectiveness of any particular fertigation system, I asked him what specific system he based his estimate upon, and whether he considered both manual and computer-controlled systems reactive to changing environmental conditions and zone irrigation. His response follows. Hi, John. I did not base my calculation on a specific system, but rather based it on a generalized approach using the most conservative calculations possible. I assumed that the source water of application would be groundwater containing 2 milligrams per liter, and that 20 million gallons of groundwater would be applied to the surface of the turf and a 20% leach rate. This retention rate is half what the consultants used, and the nitrogen levels are approximately 10% of what the consultants used, and hence my nitrogen removal calculation is about 15% of what the constituents determined. Obviously, this approach is very conservative, but my feeling is, given the unknowns, some of which you are alluding to in your email, this level of caution is warranted. Conversely, given the preponderance of the evidence now available, I think that some level of removal will occur, and thus a complete disregard of the approach, as I had done in my last calculation, is not appropriate. Let me know if I can answer any further questions. Sincerely, Christopher Goblers, PhD, SOMA, Stony Brook University. I find the applicant has not well defined either the fertigation system or the methodologies they propose to use. And given the wide disparity between what the consultant's determination are as a percentage of nitrogen removal and the estimate Dr. Goblers refers offers in contrast is only 15% of that determination, significantly different enough, 281 pounds versus 1,800 pounds, that I cannot conclude in a real-world practice that the actual stated outcome will be realized. Most of the problems encountered in the use of fertigation relate to the quality of fertilizers used. A large part of the problems revolve around phosphorus fertilizer and their solubility. Depending on formulation, phosphorus fertilizer solubility may range from 30% to almost 100%. Most potassium and inorganic nitrogen fertilizers are almost 100% soluble. Blending fertilizer materials can induce yet another set of problems. A poorly blended fertilizer material may not stay in solution. It can precipitate, settling to the bottom of the tank to form a messy sludge. This can result in a fouled system and incorrect fertilization rates. Both the town of Southampton Planning Board and Conservation Boards have expressed serious concerns regarding the Hills MUPDD over a broad range of topics. In particular, the Conservation Board stated in an opinion dated 10/25/17 that it does not support the proposal. Subsequently, the Conservation Board issued a revised opinion dated November 18, 2017, citing non-jurisdiction with regard to wetlands regulations, specifically under Chapter 325. Among the 12 statements they made, I will include 2 and will enter the full document into the record. Number 1, the Conservation Board is concerned with regards to the enormity of the Hills project, particularly with respect to its possible effects on wetlands, pine barrens, and groundwater quality. Number 3 of their 12, given the soil types, topography, and hydrology, the board is concerned that the proposed golf course may contaminate the drinking water supply, as well as Weesick Creek and the greater Shinnecock Bay. I should also note that the town of Southampton does not currently have a representative sitting on the Suffolk County Planning Commission. The Suffolk County Planning Commission has recently reversed its previous opinion, yet they continue to require the applicant to address environmental concerns and suggest the applicant report all of the potential agricultural chemicals that might be used on the golf course, not just nitrogen. The Commission also requests that the developer continue discussion with Suffolk County Public Works and Health Departments about potential issues with sanitary flow at the development. I've discussed these issues previously above, but I find that regardless, the fact that no representation sits on that board, particularly in the course of its review of this application, is of great concern to me. In my decision, I must weigh these contradictions in opinions by our local boards and the qualified opinion of the SCPC. My decision concerning this application was arrived at after a very long review of the science, the law, and the intangible, unpredictable, and uncertain criteria of potential future outcome. I did not take my responsibility lightly, nor did I approach my task with preconceived opinion. My primary concern remains regarding both the preservation of our land and our drinking water sources. My responsibility is to all residents and future generations to preserve and protect the environment, which is the primary driver of our economy, both aesthetically and in the often unseen complexity of impacts of the quality of water. These are the confounding variables that cannot be controlled with any certainty. My duty is to protect the health and welfare of all our citizens to the best of my ability. After hundreds upon hundreds of hours invested in arriving at my decision, I have no question that my decision is correct and impartial. I do not vote in favor of this application. Thank you.
Stan, do you want to be next? Okay.
Thank you. As an elected official, I recognize and understand the importance of sound planning to accommodate the economic growth along with the preserving and protecting the wealth of our natural resources that define the unique area in which we all live in. The East Quogue Land Use Plan and GIS ultimately recommends that the proposed Hills property be developed as a mixed-use PDD proposal that combines housing, resort, recreation, and open space uses with protected areas of natural resources. The development that has been proposed would only use 165 acres, and 424 acres would be permanently preserved as open space. Through my tenure, I have sat through 2 administrations which have brought forth offers to purchase the land through CPF. Both offers were declined. The Hills at Southampton Mixed-Use Plan Development District has been structured to accomplish the findings, purposes, and long-term goals established by the town. The Hills proposal, 1, provides efficient and viable land use options that complement and improve the quality of the surrounding residential neighborhoods. 2, provides economic viable use of the property that is consistent with the visions, objectives, and goals of the town's comprehensive plan and East Quogue land use plan to encourage recreational amenities that capitalize on what the town thrives on, resorts and second homeowners. With no negative impact on the East Quogue School District, which has been demonstrated by Discovery Group's other properties through my own due diligence and comprehensive research. 3, provides for the protection and improvement of the groundwater resources of the property and the Weesuck Creek watershed. The proposal provides for the installation and use of a nitrogen-reducing sewage treatment facility, where I might point out that the current standards for residential development under the current CR 200 do not require the same. The seasonal nature of the resort community also mitigates the impacts of groundwater resources, which I might add is a duplicate to Discovery's other properties nationwide. Number 4, the creation of a golf course that meets the most stringent requirements of modern golf courses and as set forth in the FEIS includes an integrated turf health management plan limiting the amount of fertilizer and water use, and will have a complete groundwater monitoring program equivalent to the programs at the Bridge and Sabonic golf courses. I'm now going to talk to you all candidly after pointing out, as an elected official and as somebody that was born and raised here in Southampton Village, I was appalled by members of the community and how they conducted themselves through the public hearings and the disparaging comments, name-calling, and bullying. I was absolutely appalled. Number 2, the economic impact that I had mentioned before. The school district and the fire district, we heard from both parties saying what economic relief they would both receive by this proposed project that's in front of us. Discovery Group, sitting up here as an elected official, there were a lot of theories, a lot of the what ifs. I actually went digging, found many articles in many high-end magazines. Do many people in this room know that the people that do belong to the Discovery Group as members are in the top 1% or less in this nation that can afford to belong to the Discovery Group as members? And do you realize through my due diligence that they all belong to either 1 to 3 of the properties nationwide? Has anyone ever once got up and proposed that question to the Discovery Group? So it would be like looking at a second homeowner that would live on South Main Street whose kids go to private boarding school. They wouldn't be attending the Southampton School District, as great as it may be. Fourth, the analysis and the comments that were received from Chris Gobler, Suffolk County Planning Commission, and the Suffolk County Water Authority, I duly respect their comments. They are educated individuals that made these comments that I take into consideration full-heartedly. So with that being said, I am casting my vote as yes to the Hills project.
All right, we're getting there. So Christine Scalera, Councilwoman Scalera is next.
Thank you. Am I good, Charles? Yeah, okay. The deliberation on this project has been extraordinarily difficult, largely because I respect both those in support and opposition to the proposal, and I've met with them all. I've listened to them all. I read the emails, I read the letters, I read the reports. I listened to those I've known and hold in high regard, and those I just met plead their case on both sides of this. While I believe political expediency in many ways shaped the process that ensued, ultimately the decision for me, as I stated in the beginning, both to the opposition and to those in support, would be based on what I believe as an initial threshold puts us in a better position from an environmental standpoint than what could be achieved under an as-of-right scenario with all its attenuant constraints. Also included with my analysis pursuant to SECRA is an obligation to consider and balance the social and economic factors. There's a lot of misinformation out there. I've been witness to a lot of emotionally charged statements and a lot of behavior from those on both sides of this issue that frankly at times was difficult to watch. Having said that, we are legislators. Difficult at times as that can be, it's what we swore to do when we took our oath of office, and it is the task we said we were up to perform. It is with that resolve that we need to sift through emotion versus reason, fact from fiction, and do what is right for this community and our town, period. While I am fully cognizant that there could be disagreement on the end result of decision-making as opinions can differ, facts cannot. And I emphasize the use of facts because SECRA requires differentiating this by stating that an environmental assessment must be limited to impacts that are probable, not speculative. By way of illustrations, while there are people saying that this particular developer is not in the business of developing regular subdivisions, so they will not build a subdivision if disapproved, even if true, doesn't mean they can't turn around and to sell it to someone who is. So basing a decision on what the developer might or might not do, if not given an approval, is speculative. It's not factual. There are others who have said that other avenues of approval of the golf course are threats, and so we should say no because that can't happen. This is untrue. There are other avenues the applicant can seek to get a golf course without the mitigation and additional benefits proposed here. That is fact. There are those who have said that we should say no because they are threatening that they can just build the as-of-right. This is not a threat. It is just a fact, and an impact of the potential of development as of right is a factor we must consider under SECRA. When we talk about the as of right, please know that there are existing land use parameters which would be applied even to the as of right under the SECRA process. For instance, in all probability, similarly to the proposal, the homes under the as-of-right scenario would be clustered on the first 591-acre parcels and again with the 29 on the Parlata 2 piece. This could result in anything from a contiguous swath of open space to non-contiguous pieces with buffers. As the properties lie within the Aquifer Protection Overlay District, there are clearing restrictions which apply, PDD or no PDD. Incorporated under the town APOD are fertilizer restrictions, PDD or no PDD, and all the attenuant SECRA mitigation that could reasonably be applied to the as-of-right would be applied. The big however is that anything you get in terms of SECRA mitigation under the as-of-right, you can get more with the PDD, and that is, again, fact. The PDD gives us more control over what happens on this property, both now and into the foreseeable future. Having said that, these are the facts I used in my analysis. The developers or the property owners of approximately 591 acres comprised of the hills proper piece, including property both north and south of the highway, the Cracky piece and the Parlata South piece from which credits are being transferred. Given these holdings, it would entitle the applicant to 118 units, exactly what they are proposing in the local law before us. Should the applicant have chosen the as-of-right use, they could have gone straight to the planning board for a density incentive without any further town board involvement. They could retire 6 Pine Barrens credits and get an additional 13 units of workforce housing for a total yield of 137 units. No public benefit and no SECRA mitigation beyond that which can be directly attributable to the subdivision. Additionally, the applicant is a contract vendee of a piece of property I refer to as Parlato 2, the cumulative yield of which would be approximately 29 lots, and the applicant has offered the extinguishment of an additional 30 Pine Barrens credits. These last two items were added to the proposal at the FEIS stage and were then included in Dr. Gobler's final report. Given the as-of-right yield of 118, which environmental mitigation was already addressed when the 5-acre upzoning was established pursuant to Town Code Section 330-246B, the only density incentive component of this application is the golf course. Thus, the community benefit analysis should be commensurate with that feature. Having said that, the community benefits go far beyond that. Analysis of predominant concerns. Much of these concerns relate to water and were centered around the nitrogen loading with the potential to affect our bays and drinking water, among other things. The ability to enhance existing environmental conditions by addressing legacy use degradation and off-site as well as on-site future potential degradation is optimally realized by this proposal, and it is the ability to address that legacy use that is particularly beneficial, singularly related to this proposal as compared to what you would require under the as-of-right scenario. While the fact that this proposal was seasonal in nature on its own was something I found appealing in terms of lowering nitrogen and low demand on other resources and infrastructure, with so much information, it took me a while to get to a place where I felt I was making a truly informed decision. From a technical standpoint, the reports prepared by Dr. Gobler, our environmental reviewers, the Suffolk County Planning Commission, the Southampton Planning Board, the testimony of John Cahill, formerly with the EPA, and others, have been addressed, assessed, and all pointed me in one direction. In fact, the latest report submitted by Dr. Gobler after the FEIS most affirmatively demonstrated to me that this proposal put us in a better position from an environmental standpoint than the as-of-right, even with conservative estimates given to the successful predictions of fertigation. Most persuasively, Dr. Gobler's final report and findings pulls from assumptions from New York State DEC's Long Island Nitrogen Action Plan, referred to as LINAP, collaboratively developed by CDM Smith, New York State DEC, Suffolk County, Cornell University, the USGS, the US EPA, and Stony Brook University. LINAP represents a scientific consensus among these teams and contains the most up-to-date and best science available on the subject of nitrogen loading within coastal watersheds. Dr. Gobler examined the PDD proposal, including changes made to the application during the FES process, and explores the 5 material ways in which it was changed. Without going too far into the specifics of those changes, each change further reduced the nitrogen loading to a standard better than drinking water quality and in even lesser amounts. The applicant was able to achieve this by, among other things as stated before, purchasing a second parcel of property that will be sterilized in addition to the expiration of the 30 Pine Barrens credits. Through this process, the impacts of the golf course use have been accounted for directly. The added extinguishment of the 30 Pine Barrens credits from the core preservation area to account for the nitrogen equivalent acts not only to mitigate the golf course, but also adds to the overall community benefit aspect, as it is a density reduction measure within the town, the school district, and upholds the objectives of the Central Pine Barrens Plan. As a result, Dr. Gobler concluded that the as-of-right scenario, even with all the attenuant constraints that would likely be imposed, would still produce more nitrogen than the Hills PDD as currently proposed. He does state that the monitoring and enforcement are needed to ensure these findings, but the local law has been supplemented to exactly address and further enhance those objectives. Specifically, while the applicant has committed to the installation of an off-site septic treatment facility for the school, which will dramatically lessen the nitrogen load, the seasonality of this project was most attractive to me because of the lessened use of septic capacity on-site and resources such as the school district, fire department, etc. There were people who objected to the veracity of the ability to limit occupancy in this way. We have been assured by our legal department that a covenant, which in substance is as laid out in the proposed local law, is indeed enforceable. Even so, I asked for 2 things, which are now required in the local law. In the unlikely event a child should attempt to attend the school district, the applicant would be required to pay a contribution to the school district based on an out-of-district cost for such attendance at the school, which price would be set by the school district. Further, in the local law has been added that a renewable bond be put in place should the enforcement of such covenant ever become an issue. Threats posed by the golf course. It is true, SECRA under the as of right as well as the PDD would require limitations on clearing and fertilization, but the law as proposed exceeds all required mandates than that which would be required under our code or under a subdivision process, notwithstanding anything which could be mandated as a result of SECRA, and those impacts would not result in the same amount of mitigation. Simply stated, while the as of right build-out under SECRA may mandate more than that which is in our town code, even if it were legally able to establish the need, the current proposal in fact voluntarily holds itself to an even greater restriction with respect to the amount of land which can be fertilized, including that land which is within the golf course parameters. The requirement of a certified applicator for fertilization associated with the golf course and safeguards resulting therefrom are greater than those which would result if left in individual homeownership. Under a typical subdivision scenario, the homeowner would be responsible for the application and self-policing of fertilizers and pesticide use, whereas under the proposal, there is a third party charged with reporting requirements for applications and ensuring that any such application is certified as appropriate as mandated by the state. Restrictions imposed with the proposal will not only be the required monitoring protocol, which has been successfully utilized throughout the town on other golf courses for over 2 decades, but also the installation of 9 lysimeters and 14 test wells. This is subject to regular testing and the ability to inspect and test same at the town's discretion. Further, in response to public concern that, and in the spirit of belts and suspenders, I have asked for, and now within the local law is a requirement that a renewable bond be required to ensure the immediate cessation of the use of the golf course and remediation should anything be detected, and continued closure until such time as it can be shown to have been cured and remediated if necessary. Again, as our obligation under SECRA is to examine the probable as opposed to the speculative, this further step, while not necessary given the historical data from our monitored golf courses, should provide additional security. Should any of my colleagues state uncertainty of adherence in the future to these requirements, I would refer them to the historical data to the contrary and point to the fact that we, and when I say we, I mean this town and all its different town board compositions, have been monitoring critically golf courses for over 2 decades. I believe each town board has taken seriously the protections and reasons for which these protocols were put in place and continue to do so decades after they were initiated. So using this notion that a board in the future may not continue with these protocols and their objections in support of a no vote based on what might happen, particularly given the factual history to the contrary, is speculative. Other considerations or benefits I found compelling where the applicant is committed to dedicating a 4-acre site to the Suffolk County Water Authority, whose well site is tested exceedingly higher than it should have for contaminants on Spinney Road. To be able to continue its use, the Water Authority remedy would be to dilute the water prior to drinking. This dedication will allow Suffolk County Water Authority to abandon altogether that well and place a new well site where it has been determined dilution would not be necessary. As SECRA requires us to balance the socioeconomic impacts of a project along with the environment, there are many other benefits which have been offered and would be above and beyond that which we could ask for under the as of right, no matter what the as of right SECRA could mandate. That is just fact. One of the initial primary objections, although this has always been private property, was that the golf course should be open to the public. As a result of, in addition to the local law requested by the supervisor, 20% of the membership will be town residents at a rate commensurate with golf courses owned and run by Suffolk County. There is money being given for the revitalization of Main Street, a sewage treatment facility for the school as stated earlier, with the additional capacity for individual homeowners to hook up and treating beyond Suffolk County Health Department standards. Additional money is being given for the schools for recreational purposes. Associated with that particular benefit relating to the school, I am deeply troubled and concerned by the fact that this proposal will, in all probability, fail, because should these properties build out according to their full development potential as of right, even with all the potential mitigation available, the toll on the school district and attenuate new infrastructure and staffing needs, as the school district has testified themselves, will be drastic. As a result, this will be felt most by those on fixed incomes or working to just make ends meet, as they will be the very first affected and potentially displaced by higher taxes related to legitimate school district demands. That is not a threat. It is not speculative, but merely a reality, in my view, a far more probable reality and far more detrimental than the idea of anyone seeking to violate a covenant and randomly send a child from this development to that same school district. I also find it important to reemphasize that this is a compatible growth area established by the Long Island Pine Barrens Act, and development was contemplated here. And the clearing proposed on site is in areas the majority of which is already disturbed. Summarizing the proposal, pursuant to all the secret documents and reports cumulatively, the current proposal safeguards groundwater monitoring in a greater way than afforded under the as of right. The current proposal restricts the use of pesticides beyond that afforded under the as of right. The current proposal mandates additional assurances that these homes remain seasonal and will not be used to establish residency for school district purposes, something not attainable under the as of right. The current proposal provides for substantial public access on this private piece of property, not attainable under the as of right. The current proposal provides for extensive proven golf monitoring practices and provides assurances of compliance. The current proposal provides both on-site and off-site state-of-the-art septic measures with the ability to not only treat that which is directly attributable to the project, but also legacy degradation, not attainable under the as of right. The current proposal represents a density reduction with the purchase and extinguishment of rights on a parcel which would have yielded 29 lots and an additional purchase and extinguishment of 30 Pine Barrens credits, not attainable under the as of right. The current proposal comports with the town's comprehensive plan, the policies and objectives of the Pine Barrens plan, lineup, etc. Beyond all of this, though, because I feel the environmental parameters have been optimized under the current proposal, is the fact that while this board unanimously accepted the draft environmental impact statement, the final environmental impact statement, acting in contravention of that by voting no on the finding statement is problematic. The FEIS, adopted unanimously by this board, stated the proposed project of all alternatives considered offers the greatest level of protection to the environment and the greatest set of benefits to the community. From the DEIS to the FEIS to the findings and now to the local law, the application has only improved. Voting no is a vote in contravention of the land use plan and many policies of the town enumerated in the comprehensive plan. It is a vote in contravention of other votes previously cast by this very board, as the finding statement, which supports this project, brings to conclusion all the offered and accepted remediation urged by the public and experts that was unanimously accepted in the DEIS and the FEIS. In my opinion, voting no is not in the best interest of this community, surrounding hamlets, nor our waterways. Given all the changes to the proposal and the resultant findings and local law which have addressed legitimate concerns, it seems like despite the facts, despite the science, there has been an unwillingness by some to look at this objectively. As legislators, we are supposed to take input from the community, our staff, and experts, and look at the facts. Finally, for those in both in opposition and in support who were engaged in this process, I thank you for your civic commitment and sacrifice of time. I sincerely hope that while you ultimately may disagree with my decision, that you at the very least know that I was open to hearing you, that I considered your point of view, and that I engaged in a fair, open-minded, and honest decision-making process. This has always been a tight-knit community, and I am hopeful that bridges can be repaired so that future challenges are met with resilience, with resolve, and with unity. And that is why I'm going to be voting yes on the proposal.
All right, thank you. So I too have also spent hundreds of hours analyzing this proposal. So I ask for your indulgence as I read a statement. It won't be as long as John's, but might be about the same as yours, Christine, in terms of length. We have reached the end of the town board's consideration of a luxury resort golf course development in East Quogue known as the Hills. After today, this matter will be closed and the board will move on to focus on many other issues and considerations. Although this project enjoys a majority support from the board, it lacks the supermajority needed for a planned development district. In many communities, golf courses are allowable uses in residentially zoned areas. In Southampton town, there is no such provision. The property owners will now weigh their options, including the as-of-right development proposals for this property. Our offer to preserve this property, I hope, will remain in effect and on the table. I have a long history with this property, starting with my attempts as a legislator with the county to preserve this land, going back 7 years. Then owners had agreed to sell the property to the county and the town. However, the town showed little interest in seeing the property preserved, and the owners gave up and sold it to a golf course developer. Even County Executive Levy at the time, in his veto message on the bill that I had passed to preserve this property, his message dated July 6th of 2011, said, and I quote, "It has already been determined that up to 70% of the parcel, including all the acreage existing within the Pine Barrens core and the special groundwater protection area, can be preserved forever through a proposed clustering of the use of the property at no cost to the taxpayer. We can preserve 300 acres without expending a single dime." I was successful in overriding that veto and moving the county toward preservation, but to no avail. As you know the history, this eventually was purchased by a different entity, and the development that we're considering was put forth. Zoning traditionally follows comprehensive planning. The town engages its citizenry with the assistance of planning professionals in plotting a course for future development. Environmental, social, and economic concerns are evaluated on a town-wide basis, and recommendations are made for appropriate land uses based on community needs, taking into account environmental conditions and existing land use patterns. Comprehensive plans and updates, once adopted, are supposed to form the basis for zone changes. In the case of the Hills, the latest adopted comprehensive plan amendment for this area recommends precisely the type of development being proposed. Had the town put the zoning in place following the adoption of the comprehensive plan, this matter would not have been before this town board. It would have been sent directly to the planning board. Typically, zone changes require a simple majority, but again, nothing about this proposal has been simple. The PDD process was the only clear path to build a private membership golf course in the town. This path would place the fate of the zoning request before an elected body and require 4 out of 5 votes for approval. A prior town board voted 4-1 in favor of considering the zoning alternative. Much of the public's initial reaction to the proposal focused on the underlying PDD law. Planned development districts were taking the place of comprehensive planning. Under the PDD law, new development proposals were being considered on a case-by-case basis, with developers engaging with the town board in a flexible planning process. In exchange for increased use of the land, the developer would offer other community benefits, such as affordable housing or historic preservation. The community began to see this dialogue as prone to political influence, with the developers the big winners and the community getting shortchanged. The PDD law was undermining public confidence in the town's planning and zoning functions, creating the perception that zoning was somehow for sale. Recognizing that the law itself had become toxic, the town board decided to repeal the PDD law and process the last PDD request, namely the Hills. First, I had to assure myself that the town had made a serious attempt to preserve this property. A fair market offer was made and rejected by the owners. The job then of the town board was to evaluate the proposed zoning alternative and compare it carefully to the current zoning to determine if the new zoning should be permitted. For this review, I decided to fully ignore any community benefits that were not associated with issues arising from the zoning request itself. I wanted to compare apples to apples, so to speak. Benefits such as school scholarships, land for the local fire department, and parking for downtown would not cloud my judgment regarding one development proposal versus the other. I would consider unrelated community benefits only if I felt the alternative zoning was beneficial on its own merits. I established a 10-point test and published it in the Southampton Press in July. I placed environmental considerations at the top of the list. The criteria were as follows: nitrogen loading, pesticides, clearing, number of housing units, total square footage of buildings, traffic, school impacts, jobs created, property taxes, and community support. I met with opponents and proponents of the project and discussed my criteria for evaluation. I explained that to get my support, the project would have to be objectively better in all 10 categories. I explained that I would list independent professionals such as Dr. Chris Gobler from Stony Brook to assist me in the evaluation. My methodology was embraced by both supporters and opponents. I had set the bar almost impossibly high. One staunch opponent said, "How could you say no if it's better in every single way?" Another said, "Follow the science," and implored me to listen to and trust Dr. Gobler. My first concern was the added use of the property. The current zoning allows 118 housing units, but the developer wanted a golf course in addition to 118 housing units. In exchange for the added use, the developer offered a community benefit package. That was a non-starter to me. The proposed zoning was more intensive than the existing, and I would not support it. Dr. Gobler also railed against the proposal, saying it was more nitrogen loading than the allowable zoning. Many people spoke for and against the initial project at 4 public hearings. After listening to the public, my first approach to modifying the proposal to address public concerns was to eliminate the housing yield associated with the area being used to create the golf course. Approximately 130 acres would be needed to build this golf course. At 5-acre zoning, the land under the golf course would yield 26 homes. So I asked the developers to remove 26 homes from the proposal, reducing the 118 units down to 92 units and a golf course. The developer then suggested that rather than shrinking the number of homes allowed, they expand the amount of preserved land associated with the proposal. My response was that it would have to be land in East Quogue with a yield of at least 26 homes and be located in a more environmentally sensitive area. The developer then secured an option to purchase 33 acres of property with a 29-lot yield at the headwaters of Weesuck Creek. To further reduce yield, the developer additionally agreed to purchase and abandon 30 Pine Barrens credits. 20% of these could otherwise be used to increase density for the Hills project by 6 additional homes. The remaining 24 credits would reduce density in the West Hampton area, which also faces issues of overdevelopment and nitrogen loading. To further address nitrogen loading, the developer proposed a state-of-the-art sewage treatment facility that would remove twice as much nitrogen as the county required. They also proposed building a similar facility for the school, a major nitrogen contributor. I asked Dr. Gobler to analyze the new proposed mitigation, as well as a possible town requirement to limit the amount of applied fertilizer to no more than 2 pounds of nitrogen per 1,000 square feet per year of turfed areas. This level would provide extraordinary protection to the aquifer and surface waters. Dr. Gobler also analyzed the proposed irrigation method referred to as fertigation. The concept of fertigation is to water the turf with well water laden with high concentrations of dissolved nitrogen from fertilizers used by nearby farm fields. This would theoretically allow the turf grasses to absorb the nitrogen from the groundwater and then allow it to recharge back into the water table at a lower concentration of nitrogen. I asked Dr. Gobler to compare the proposed development and mitigation to the existing zoning and to use conservative assumptions, including the lowest as-of-right yield under current zoning, and to assume that the as-of-right development would include individual advanced wastewater treatment systems, although not currently required in this area. I was prepared for whatever determination Dr. Gobler made. If it did not meet the nitrogen loading criteria, then I would not support the project. If it did, I would still examine the other 9 criteria before making a final decision. Dr. Gobler concluded that the amended development proposal, even without the fertigation, would result in less nitrogen loading than the lowest as-of-right development. Fertigation would tilt the scales even more in favor of the golf course development. To deal with pesticides, The proposal included a town-approved integrated turf health management plan, ITHMP. The greens were to be lined with a vinyl barrier to prevent migration into groundwater. The greens would be piped into vinyl-lined retention ponds. Sabonic Golf Course has a similar system. Wanting to go a step further, I asked for a prohibition of synthetic pesticides on the lawn areas associated with the housing units and the areas known as the roughs of the golf course. I also inserted language that the ITHMP would be such as to minimize the use of synthetic pesticides to the greatest extent possible. I also wanted enforcement mechanisms that included the closure of the golf facility. The as-of-right housing subdivision would result in 118 separate residential parcels. There would be many separate landscaping companies applying pesticides and fertilizers unregulated by the town. The list of allowable chemicals would be determined by the state and include products that the town would otherwise be prohibiting at the golf course. There would also be no independent monitoring and reporting. I determined that the regulated program with lime greens and pesticides and pesticide-free areas, and under the town's yearly approval of the ITHMP and an independent monitoring program, would introduce less pesticides into the environment than the as-of-right development. I worked my way through the other criteria. You will find most of this analysis in the secret finding statement and the table attached. Briefly, nitrogen loading. More than 700 pounds per year less nitrogen than the lowest density as-of-right development according to Dr. Gobel's finding. Several thousand pounds less according to the town's scientific consultants. Pesticides, 190 less acres subject to pesticide application and a monitored town-restricted and approved ITHMP program. Clearing, 34 acres less cleared under the proposed PDD. Housing units, 51 less housing units. Total square footage of buildings, 500,000 less square footage of development under the PDD proposal than the as-of-right. Traffic, 60 to 90 less vehicle trips per day. School impacts, up to 186 less school-aged children. Jobs, 75 additional full-time equivalent jobs than the as-of-right development. Property taxes, 2.7 million additional tax revenues for the school, a total of 3.6 million additional tax revenues per year across all tax jurisdictions. That includes fire and ambulance and other special tax districts. Community support. In terms of community support, I believe that preservation still is the preferred alternative. As far as development goes, there is no town-wide consensus. However, I believe that a majority of the residents of the host community of East Quogue believe that the proposed alternative is better than the existing zoning. Therefore, all of my 10 criteria are met. After concluding that the new zoning alternative is better in every way than the existing zoning, I changed my focus to the PDD law itself and wrestled with the language that the community benefits must be commensurate with the benefits to the developer. Since the housing units are allowed under zoning, the only benefit to the developer is the golf course itself. Many of the offered benefits were in fact mitigation of the impacts of the development. I began to examine the unrelated benefits and came to the conclusion that they did not quite match the benefit to the developer. The use itself was not a public benefit. It was a private golf club. The town of Southampton does not have a single public 18-hole golf course. So to meet the PDD requirement, I placed into the PDD law a requirement that 20% of the available tee times be available to the public at affordable rates. The introduction of this town-wide community benefit, combined with the other community benefits, creates a package that, based on my calculations, meets or exceeds the requirement that the PDD law and the community benefits are commensurate with the developer benefits. Remember, it is the PDD law itself that encourages a creative, flexible, and cooperative planning process between the town and the developer that results in a proposal that is more in line with the needs of the town and with the goals of the comprehensive plan than the existing zoning. What we are voting for today, I believe, is a better alternative for the property than what currently exists under zoning. Although I still prefer preservation, the facts and independent analysis support this alternative over the existing permitted land use, and therefore I will be voting in the affirmative. I understand I understand that this board is not unified in its decision. I recognize that there are other considerations but beyond my own, and that people can reach different conclusions based on the same set of facts. I know my colleagues love this town, and like myself, are concerned about the future of our community and our environment. I respect their opinions enormously. After today's vote, we will come together as a board to address all of the issues facing the town. We will engage our community in planning for the future. We will take a look at golf and other recreational uses and evaluate our code and determine under what conditions, if any, such facilities should be constructed. I want to thank Kyle Collins and Janice Shearer and the entire planning department for their extraordinary assistance with evaluating this proposal. I want to thank Dr. Gobler for his assistance. I want to especially thank the community for sending letters and emails and for speaking at meetings and letting us know your concerns regarding this proposal. I realize that the final vote will leave some celebrating and others disappointed. I assure you that all your voices were heard and considered. I hope sincerely that we move forward as one community working together for the common good, and that we respect each other's opinions even when they differ from our own. Together, we still have many issues to discuss and problems to solve. Thank you. Okay, anything else before I call the vote? Everybody good? Okay, all in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Abstentions? All right, there are 3 yeses, 2 noes. As has been stated, this does require 4 votes. The PDD resolution number 1123 of 17 lacks the required 4 votes and is defeated. Is there any other business? Seeing none, I'll make a motion to adjourn. Seconded by Councilman Glencoe. All in favor? Aye.